There we are. All right, I am going to call this meeting of the Hollister School District Governing Board to order at 6:00 p.m. I'll begin with a roll call. Clerk Jan Chris.
Present.
Trustee Carla Torres de Luna.
Here.
Trustee Elizabeth Martinez. Trustee Steve Kane. Here. Rob Bernowski, present. We're present. Mr. Ochoa, would you like to lead us to the flag
I'd love
salute?
to. Please stand for the flag salute, place your right hand over your heart, salute pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jen, let's make sure we've got a new certificate for
Recognition.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 4-0. Mr. Ochoa.
My time. I'm excited tonight because I think we have some very special visitors who are online right now. And I spoke to our Director of Nutrition Services, Ann Pennington, earlier this week about the importance of, I'm going to take this off so they can hear me, about the importance of recognizing our student nutrition staff. And so she asked them to watch this tonight, so I hope they're out there. I hope you can see us here. I hope you can see the board, to all of our awesome nutrition staff workers. And what I want to do is recognize the efforts of this entire department.
Yeah.
Because during this rapidly changing and challenging environment created by the coronavirus, the people that have been reporting to work every single day deserve to be recognized and celebrated.
Absolutely.
So just as the teachers and principals have mobilized in the last month to change our delivery system to students, the entire process for feeding our kids also changed in the span of a weekend. And our nutrition staff did what only great teams can do, which is they all figured out how to contribute to health. There was no game plan for it, there was no manual for it, it was just every single day we showed up and our nutrition staff said, this needs doing, so I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna tell my boss, hey, we've got a plan for this tomorrow. And watching them shift and be flexible and work hard was a real joy for all of us in the nutrition. One of the big changes they had was a switch to a curbside pickup for a few weeks, and that was a daily process. And then we figured out we're not getting the numbers we want, and maybe it's because people can't make it every single day to wait in the line. So we said, let's fix it. Let's hold the days once a week and allow our families to plan and prepare to go and get their food. Within days, our student nutrition numbers just skyrocketed to the point that we're now averaging 50,000 meals every week that we serve to this community. At the same time, the staff that has participated in the program has been dedicated to students. The one thing they will all tell you when you talk to them is the best part of my week is the 5 hours when my students drive up and say hi to me and wave and clap for me and cheer me on, and I get to see my students again. So it's just really, it's an unfortunate thing our teachers and our principals don't get to see very much, but our student nutrition staff is holding down that fort for us. One of the things that I think is important for the district to understand is when we were in school, we were feeding about 55% of the kids every day. You know, some kids just brought their lunch from home. That number has completely flipped, and we're feeding close to 88% of the students in the district today.
Wow.
It's just been a skyrocketing number. At the same time, I want
Did you say 80%?
88% of our students. 88%. at the same time, I want the board to understand that these folks that have been committed and these folks that have been growing every day, they haven't just shown up and done the same thing every day. It's been a growth for them. That these are people who, at the highest level of the district, the school board, the governing board, they deserve your recognition and your appreciation. And I know, because I work with all of you, that the entire board of trustees greatly appreciates everything that our student nutrition staff does. So,
You know, one of the things that we have all had the pleasure of doing is serving lunch at Maze and Rancho when work with them. And I gotta tell you, we have been in awe. And they just tell us what to do and we do it and we have no problem with it. And they're so professional. And I'm sure we plug things up and they just kind of move us along and get us to do things the correct way. And I've always been very impressed with their professionalism and how they treat our children. So I just really.
I got a chance to see them in action, passing the food out. You know, they got the whole hand signal on.
Yeah,
Because, you know, you get a lot of cars
sure.
that backed up there. If you are totally organized, you're gonna have a problem. You get people that'll be upset.
We might have an accident, yeah.
Yeah, you don't see that. It moves.
They got it going.
Everything's ready to go. It's very well organized. I was very impressed, very impressed.
High professional.
Yep.
Very good.
thank you.
We are blessed.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, any public comment?
No.
There's none. And I do want to mention, President Bernowski, we did set up the process the same way as our last meeting, so any member of the public who wants to email in a public comment, there's an email that's online available. We're waiting for the emails to come in. We've also set up this phone system, so anybody who calls the number that was publicly posted on the agenda, it will ring here. I'll be able to put them on hold in the event that let's say there's 6 callers who want to give public comment. It sets it up like a queuing system, so you're caller 1, it tells you are caller 1, there's 5 minutes left, please hold. When you hang up the phone and it's Mr. Kane's turn to speak, it'll tell him you are now about to speak at the board meeting. I, from this phone, can open it and put them on speakerphone, and anybody could call in and also give public comment. So that's the system we've put together. We're gonna continue to implement it all through the summer, assuming that we continue to have these restrictions on being able to hold our normal board meetings with 100 chairs.
Have we tried it?
I have.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we tested it out. It was there at our last meeting as well, but we tested it out again today, and it's all working and it's all flowing.
So there's no email.
There's no emails and there's no phone calls.
Okay.
So the one question I would have with regards to that, I assume it's appropriate, is that's not, the call-in information's not posted on our agenda.
Yes, it is.
The call-in information is on the very front page of our agenda, so
Yeah, right here.
if you look at the board,
It's the second page, right here.
Oh, second page, got it. There it is, yep.
Goes 2 pages. Step
so
by
our
step.
email that we use is boardmeeting@hesd.org. We couldn't think of a simpler one.
Right.
It's boardmeeting@hesd.org. Then the phone number is 630-6320.
Excellent.
I think it's high praise that, considering everything that's been going on, nobody's called in, nobody's sent an email for these board meetings.
And when they do, it'll be really simple. It patches right in.
And cool,
Thank you for doing that.
Kudos to our IT staff.
yeah.
Okay, consent agenda. Obviously, we'll pass this in one motion. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or 0. Information items. You are on 8A, promotion ceremony update.
Promotion ceremony. the challenges of being a school district with 10 schools is every single school is different. So we're always struggling with the balance of wanting there to be equity, but not wanting to stifle the individualism of schools. Because I think if you don't have a good balance there, then you actually suppress innovation and you suppress enthusiasm, but you also can't have complete, everybody does what they want, otherwise you end up with a low product at one place versus another. So I wanted to take the board through our process of how we arrived at developing promotion parades, and it started with the putting everything on the table. So one idea at the time was delaying until July or August and holding a real honest to goodness promotion ceremony. As soon as the numbers started to climb nationally, cold water was poured on that right away because of the expected continued social distancing that would take place. The other was a virtual ceremony. There was a lot of concern about doing a totally virtual ceremony because it wouldn't give students the ability to see one another, albeit even in a vehicle, but to be recognized, to truly have the attention and the celebration that they wanted. And so we started to look into the idea of having children drive up in a vehicle with their parents and be able to receive their promotion certificate, be able to have their picture displayed, and be able to feel like they're part of a group celebration. And so what we landed on was, let's go and talk to the fire department, to the city of Hollister, to the county of San Benito, and to San Benito Police Department, so we can find out what questions they would have, what concerns they would have. And those meetings started 4 weeks ago. But as you know, those organizations are very impacted right now. So it took time to get those meetings together because everybody's schedule is really compressed right now. At the time we said we want our parent groups to continue to plan and be creative and put ideas together, but we want the district team and the school principals to iron out the logistical details with the fire department, the police department, the city, and the county. And honestly, there were a couple of days where it looked like it wasn't gonna happen somehow. Like, there were just so many questions that were being thrown at us about these events that we thought, maybe it's just going to be too much to try to do anything like this. And what ended up happening was we just kept going. We answered every question they had, and we wanted to make sure that they understood how we would take the medical precautions and how we would organize the times that students would arrive to pick up their promotion certificates. And what I want to do is I want to take you through each school so you get a flavor of how to work at each one of our schools. First up is the Hollister Dual Language Academy. I'm going to shed it so we don't have the vehicles in the background. The Hollister Dual Language Academy is going to have their event Wednesday, June 10th at Bolado Park. One of the reasons they chose Bolado Park was because of their concern about the odd shape of the parking lot. And also I think maybe they just kind of felt like the parking lot has been the source of a lot of frustration for a lot of families for 9 years. Because of the traffic concerns that happened. So it didn't seem like the right place to celebrate. A place where we usually wait in line for an hour at a time. And so.
Plus we graduated a lot of park.
Yes. And what ended up happening was, I have another one.
Okay.
So, their event will take place at Bolado Park, and the HDLA program will stay almost, from a time perspective, very similar to what a typical ceremony would be. So their event will start in the evening. They tend to have an evening event, and that's when they requested to have it. They'll do pre-recorded national anthem opening speech, keynote speaker, presentation of awards, and valedictorian speech.
How will that occur?
It's gonna be pretty cool, so, our tech department has developed a YouTube live stream that will have the logo of this, so if you can think of your big screen at home, right? Or your big computer screen. It'll have the logo of the school. It'll have a camera that stays fixed on the child who's being recognized, that's driving through, that's getting their certificate. And we plan to have a person that actually goes from car to car to kind of give the kids just a little bit more shine. Hey, what's your name? Oh, Carla, and oh, I'm an atheist, oh, say hi to my family. And so that one will play in one of the little screens, and then, so as the event is starting, right at 6:30, the stream will go to the pre-recorded national anthem, then the pre-recorded flag salute, then the pre-recorded valedictorian speech, so everything will be done in advance. That will take somewhere around 12 to 14 minutes, then the first student will get recognized.
So the
It'll actually be real time.
So the people in the cars, they just use it on their phones and they can see it on their phones.
So
Exactly.
everybody's lined up with their phone.
Everyone.
Or their iPad,
in the
whatever.
car, they're gonna have a
Right.
phone,
Okay.
right? They're gonna have a phone, they can have it live on their phone. They'll
Okay.
see themselves, they'll have their
That's
phone,
cool.
we'll walk by, they'll see themselves, you know.
Yeah,
It's, the whole thing's being recorded, so a family member who works
That is
at night,
awesome.
a
Yeah.
grandmother who's a nurse, you know,
so
somebody
everybody can see it.
they'll watch it the next day.
Nice.
The whole
It'll
thing
be
will
here on the website.
It'll be on our YouTube channel.
Awesome.
It'll never go away. The same channel that we have for school board meetings, we now have one for each of the grade levels for content, and we're creating a new one for
Awesome.
promotion ceremonies. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, how do you organize, if they're in a line, who comes when?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. HDLA is a little bit different. They're in the same category as AAA and Calaveras because their total number of students is much lower. So, as far as we're concerned, when they pull up, that's the order they're in. We won't attempt to put them in an order of 1 through
That was what I was
about 60
wondering.
kids. Rancho San Justo and Mays is a different story.
Yeah.
We'll have time
I've seen
frames.
that, yeah.
So based on alpha, we'll go
Okay.
time frames.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was, again, you know, when we worked with Highway Patrol and the sheriff and the police department, one of the things they said is we can't ever have a backup on any of our roads, so we have to do it in a way that
Right.
that maintains public road safety as a high priority.
How many graduates total and how many would come in at one time for the big schools?
At the big schools, we basically broke it down because the graduates are somewhere around, you know, they're different sizes, but Rancho has about 290 and Mays is closer to 225.
Oh.
And at no point in time will they have more than 80 cars in the queue to go for the graduation. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing is, you know, these parent groups are gonna decorate Bellato Park, they're gonna decorate the schools that are gonna have it at their site. HDLA asked me to do a pre-recorded speech, so I feel very special and very honored, and I'm all excited and writing multiple drafts and doing it in English and Spanish, so I'm very excited about that. Because we want kids to continue to feel that this is truly how my time is closing up. It was that's ultimately what promotion ceremonies are. It's a ceremony to end a chapter in your life to start at San Benito High School. And I really believe this will feel that way for the kids. It will not be the same.
Right.
I won't compare it to a
No.
typical ceremony, but it will feel special to them.
Well, I think,
Yeah, they will
so I have an 8th grader and
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you guys have put this thought and I tell my 8th grader, I know it's not what you wanted, but do you, and then I have a nephew who's graduating from high school, so I tell them both the same, but do you guys realize that you have a historic promotion and graduation
Yeah.
that nobody else will ever have?
No one will ever.
No one will ever, and you'll be talked about in the history
Yeah.
books.
Right,
And the other piece to this drive up, thank you for doing that, because I think it also gives us parents the ability to celebrate by decorating our car and like, whatever it is we're gonna do in the parking lot.
Getting dressed up.
Getting dressed up and all this, and so I think that that's the best that we could do, and so I appreciate the
You know,
district's efforts.
What else is each individual student, in the past, if you have the big ceremonies,
Right.
there's no applause or
Right.
anything, it's just,
It's
you
just
just
that,
walk out there. This way, your whole family's right there,
Yeah.
and you're getting it, what
Yeah.
better could you have,
I
really?
mean, of course, we're not gonna say it's the best, right, but it is. But, and then the
It's
other
better
piece,
than nothing.
I wanna also say, like you said, equity, I think we have to also remember that equity is not equality, guys.
Right.
So I appreciate the district's sensitivity to, what Mays needs, what Rancho needs, and HDLA and Calaveras AAA, cause we're all, it's all drive up
Yeah.
with their own unique.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And Maze, since you brought up Maze, Maze has a little bit of a change that happened after I posted this, so I wanna update the board. Hollister Police asked if it was possible to have all of the Maze graduates enter through Gavilan Hills HDLA, go through their parking lot, access the track.
What?
There's a back road there, right, the track.
Our vehicles go
You can
back,
go up that.
Right.
our vehicles go back there.
Yeah, the Mola.
But not on the track?
Uh-huh,
On the track,
on the track.
okay.
Our vehicles go on there for a variety of, when we
Right,
have,
right.
when we have maintenance needs that are required there. So we went and checked, it's accessible, the fire department verified it's fire accessible. And what that will do is it will make it so that we won't have any backup on Meridian. They were worried about Meridian being.
Yeah, in case there's a fire,
I
yeah.
wonder how you're gonna do that.
So what will happen is
That's what the
kids will
U-turn-
enter through Gavilan Hills HDLA, come through Maze,
Mm,
pick up their certificate, and then exit going towards 25.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's just one nice flow.
Yep.
That was the one change at Maze. Maze was really passionate about having it at Maze. They did not want to have it at Beloit Park.
They always have.
Because that came
They
up.
used to have.
We
it.
used to always have it at May.
Yeah, I know,
We
but then
never
it went
wanted
over
it
here
allowed.
for a couple years.
Yeah,
That came up because they said, well, if Rancho's having it at Bellato, then, some families will say, well, hey, how come Rancho had it there? Well, for Maze, we want it here, we want it in our community, we want it in our
Nice.
neighborhood.
Nice,
So again, it was just a way for us to personalize it towards them
nice.
and give them the option. And then Rancho San Justo, you can tell they have the 4 times from 9 AM spanning until 3, going all the way to 5 PM.
Wow.
So we will have, to answer all of your burning questions, those board members that wanna be there.
Yes, all day event.
We'll
We'll
be,
be there,
we'll have,
Can we be there?
9 to 3, oh, yeah.
Oh.
the district and the principals will send you an email invitation, but we'll have tents, we'll have water, we'll have food, we'll have to, because our staff will be up, the technology staff will be here the whole time videotaping,
Yeah.
making sure the technology's working. Maintenance staff will be there facilitating all the
do we have to
access.
stand this whole time, or?
No, we'll make it very comfortable for people
Okay.
over there. But we wanna give, we have a school board member whose daughters is promoting from her school. We want her to be able to do that, but also feel that she's invited to the Rancho ceremony, which is the day before, and to the Calaveras AAA. And many of you have lifelong friends and neighbors who are teachers and parents of kids at that school. We wanna make sure that you have, I also just think
Thank you.
it gives that connection between the board and the community when you're there on
Oh, yeah.
special days and times.
Thank you, I thought we weren't gonna be able to go.
You are.
Yay.
All right, yeah, I didn't think we were gonna be able
As
to
long
go
as,
either.
I don't see why not, as long as we take the.
I thought initially, right, we didn't know.
How is the drive gonna be on this one?
For Calaveras AAA,
Yeah.
For Rancho.
for Rancho. So Rancho's at Bellato Park.
Oh, it's.
That's
Yeah, Rancho's at
Okay,
Bellato
because
Park.
it says event location, Laurel Park, and it says RSJ Middle School.
Oh, well,
That needs to
Oh,
change.
Yeah, it does.
I'll have to get that person in
Typo.
trouble, whoever did that.
Typo.
So it isn't there?
It's at Bellato Park.
Okay.
But I am curious about Calaveras AAA, because that's also kind of small. How many graduates do they have?
A very low number, smaller than HDLA.
30?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just for 30 kids, so
Okay.
it's just a really small number. And then what I provided as backup are copies of the maps, so you can look at them, that you were interested in seeing how it would actually come together at Bellato Park. And then of course,
Oh, I was gonna get a limo. No? I'm glad you put that there.
Now, we used to have that problem with the dances.
Yep.
so you can see the entrance at Calaveras AAA is the school entrance. And we weave everybody through that parking lot, out and around, through the loop. It should be right after this light. I can show
Okay,
you.
got it.
You got it?
Got it. To Buena Vista.
Oh, they're gonna go into the circle?
They're gonna go into the school first,
Oh,
so
okay.
they'll be coming on Buena Vista. They'll go into the school,
Uh-huh.
they'll go through the cones that we direct them to go into the school, so that
Ah,
will
to
allow about
minimize it.
25 cars in
Got
there. Then we bring them back out,
Smart.
then, so the only cars in line are the ones in between the two entrances. And
Mhm.
that whole area has that big, beautiful street parking, so we're just gonna put cones that day so nobody's
Oh,
there.
nice.
So they really actually won't be on Buena
So
Vista
technically
Road.
they're parked.
Somewhat, they're
Yeah.
basically occupying the space that the parked cars
Perfect.
occupy. The police signed off on it, we'll put those big, nice cones to keep the people where they're supposed to go. Then they'll go in the loop, they'll get their certificate in the loop and they'll exit towards,
West side will
West side
This
Boulevard.
way. So they're making a right, not left.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Now, one question, what happens if, a parent decides they want aunt and uncle to come and another car behind them?
They can't,
That is
They
not
have
allowed.
the, you'll have the, it says on here,
You
right?
need to have some kind of pass, yeah,
they'll
okay,
have to have a pass,
gotcha.
yeah. And we can't have them in the procession to go get the certificate because then we'll sort of have this stagger in between kids getting awards and that sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
What I've heard from a lot of families is, because social distancing right now is starting to ease up a little bit, some families are planning some get-togethers for their child graduating or their child promoting. So they're looking at this as, okay, the family's back home watching it
Right.
together, then they come home.
When they
and
come home, the
Yeah.
celebration starts.
And what we were thinking, see Lali's not watching, but what we were thinking is, they're doing the birthday drive-throughs. So we're gonna do a family birthday
Yeah.
and family promotion, tell them to come by at 5 and wave to see Lali as she's all
Oh,
dressed
that's
up before
cool.
she goes.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be nice.
that'd be nice, yeah.
We want these
Don't
kids,
copy it, I'm just kidding.
we want these kids to feel that there was closure to
Yeah,
their time at Rancho.
Their year was important, they
Yes.
haven't been ignored.
yeah.
And then they get to go to a brand new high school that,
Yeah.
who knows, are we going back, are we halftime, or full? So unfortunately for these kids, they're going through this change in their life and there's just a lot of uncertainty.
It's hard.
So are our SROs gonna be part of this process?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, good.
That's what scares me to death is, a lot of cars driving around, and I assume that the teachers and stuff will be in these parking lots, saying goodbye to their kids and.
And we have had a lot of teachers that have asked, how can we participate, and we thought of exactly those things.
6 feet apart with masks.
6 feet apart,
Under canopies?
we'll have lots of pop-ups,
Nice.
we'll have some comfortable seating, but,
That'll be fun.
it'll be an experience for everybody.
I'm just wondering, do you need to hand the driver some sort of note that says, your job is to focus on your driving, not the surrounding events?
Eyes on the road,
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll be slow enough.
no.
eyes on the road.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of honking that day.
Oh, that'll be
If
fun.
you ever get those complaint emails, expect them on that.
Do you remember And do you remember how they used to decorate for quinceañeras for the cars?
Oh my gosh, the
Hopefully.
flowers, the paper flowers.
Just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is a good thing because I'll tell you the number one complaint I do hear as I'm out and about is everybody is disappointed, that they're not you know, it's not a normal year for their kids. I was up at the landfill on Monday and some guy stopped me and I don't even know who he is, but he knew who I was. And the fact that graduation ceremonies, his words, robbed. I'm like, wow. You know, anyway, I love that with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like he had something to do with it.
Thank you to everybody who's coordinating all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of work.
there.
That's
A lot of
not
work.
organization, there's
Thank
a lot of
you.
organization.
Appreciate all the staff,
Yeah.
the administrators,
Yes,
everybody who
everyone
worked on
who's
this.
working on it.
It's been a team effort, and Kip Ward has put a ton of time and energy.
Thanks, Kip, for,
Yes, thank you for everybody that did this.
yeah,
Doesn't happen by itself.
no.
Right.
And the parents.
Yay!
Yay, parents! Happy being teachers and parents.
They count too.
Let's not talk about that.
All right.
This one I'm excited about.
Alright, item 8B is our district website updates presentation. And as the board is aware, the board approved the contract with IES Cyber School in April of 2020, so last month. And we went with a program that was fell into a couple of categories. One, it had an ease of use for principals and staff to be able to load content. Two, it was compliant with all of the ADA requirements, and it could be bilingual in English and Spanish with the click of a button, so it wouldn't require a lot of work on the user's part to be able to say, I need to read this all in my home language. And then we chose a product that was affordable as well. So this product, on a year-to-year basis, will cost $6,000 for the district, so that's a very affordable price for us, and we knew the budget scenario was not good, so we had to go for something economical. Other companies, I can tell you, are in the $25,000 to $30,000 range per year for us, so this is a significant savings. A couple of the benefits of going with IES, I think we struggle as a district to provide timely information. I think we need to do a better job of getting information out to families sooner and in a more clear way. I think our website does not adequately promote our district, and I think the IES format will allow us to do that much more effectively. The way that the site looks, the predictability of the site, because basically what this company is doing is they're starting with our district websites, but they're going to build all of our school websites. So when you open up the tabs for each one of our schools, there'll be a uniformity and a sharpness to it that will draw your eye to the good things our district is doing.
Alright.
The other thing is that it will allow us to increase family involvement. More parents will be involved because more parents will go to our site and review the information that's there. And then again, we've talked about this a lot, but the need to establish consistency. It's very important that we formulate what defines the Hollister School District and make sure that that's in place at all of our schools.
It should also be easy to use, to find information quickly, not be a Byzantine maze.
Because we're somewhat limited right now in terms of being able to access technology physically here, I've pasted in the site. You can type that into your browsers at home. You can, if you want to type it into your phone tonight, you're welcome to do that as well. And it'll show you the template that we selected. What they're doing right now is they're migrating all of the information from our district website and putting it into the template. And they're emailing me and asking me for feedback on whether or not I like certain fonts, whether or not the color of green is the right tint, the graphics, the shapes of things. The price that we paid includes 3 modifications, so we've sent up our first modification. At our regular school board meeting, I'll display in a report to the board the revisions from the very first site. So you'll get a chance to see it and give me some feedback as well. Then we'll still have 2 more opportunities to send back notes and say, oh, this doesn't kind of fit right, and let's kind of massage it this other way. And what we what we plan to do with the site itself is heavily promote our Facebook page, heavily promote our Twitter page, heavily promote our YouTube channels. And then the nice thing about it is it comes with these really easy to understand icons and widgets. So right now on our site, if you pull up our site, there is, I would just say there's so much text and so few icons that draw your attention. You know, our calendar and our current website is the actual Google Calendar. So it has a lot of information, but it doesn't draw your attention. You don't really know it's a calendar. Right now, where you click on it, it's a black box with white text. So that just doesn't draw your attention to it. And this new site, everything will have a uniformity and little icons and little logos. So it'll be a calendar logo that says school calendar,
Awesome.
district calendar. So we're excited about that because I think the one thing about technology is I'll be able to share data with the board next year and tell you how many more people visit our site in 2020 as opposed to 2019. I'll be able to validate for you. We used to get 400 hits a day, now we get 975 hits a day. And what we expect is to have a minimum of a doubling of the number of people visiting because we'll be able to integrate it more effectively. Because right now, making changes to our website, it's difficult. It's very difficult to upload content, and so consequently, we have sites in some school sites that go months without update.
And
it take really long.
the YouTube channels, you said also that you'll be able to see who's accessing how many times. That'll be connected to this too, right?
What happens right now is on our district website, when we post content, there's a big banner that has a scrolling picture. And in our website, you actually can't go into it and create those banners. You actually have to go to a different program and create the visual for it and then open up we use Final Site is the program we use for our district webpage. And it's complicated. I'm a tech person and it's hard for me to use. So I've never actually created content on the banner. I have to email somebody else and say, hey, San Benito Live is getting ready to publish this article. Will you post it to our webpage as well? So that person then has to go and open up, design it, and then upload it. So it's like a 5-step process. And this new website I'll be able to open up the design. It'll have pre-built
Nice.
backgrounds,
Yeah.
and it gets
Makes it
uploaded really easy,
Yeah.
really simply.
Nice.
Yeah,
Super.
excited. The other nice feature is it has some upgrades for mobile devices. So right now, if you open up our district website on your mobile device, certain models you have to do pinch and zoom
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and people actually just stop going to your site if that's the case.
Yeah.
This program comes with a mobile device included in the cost. So
Nice.
when you open it on your phone, super easy, really big text, easy to see, no pinch and zoom,
nice.
just scrolling and
Awesome.
finding the information you want. Yeah, so we're excited about that. The update is at our next school board meeting, I'll be able to show you the beta site. So I look forward to doing it.
Awesome. Budget update.
Well, there's nothing to discuss here, so we'll just go ahead and move on. There's very little going on in the budget, so. Where do we start here? So, I wanna give the board an idea of the different things that have happened in the last just 5 months. We knew going into next year that our COLA would be somewhere around 2.29, somewhere in the 2.2 range. At the time, we were starting to see some warning signs that, the budget in California was not gonna be as good as we had hoped. And as soon as we went out for coronavirus, the district built a budget, assuming a 0% COLA. Right around the beginning of April, the district, also put together, a plan to change school start times, because right now we're operating 4 school buses. And we found out that if we just adjust start times by about 10 minutes on either end, we can reduce it to 2 school buses transporting the general ed kids around the district. That's a pretty significant savings for us, so we've planned that. As you know, the district has approved the layoff resolutions for both management, classified, and a number of certificated positions have been reduced for the upcoming year. So we've done a lot already, and we haven't even been shown what the data is. But of course, the concern is what we started to hear last week. So I had shared with the board a couple of PDF documents and sent it out to both of our teacher union and our classified employees union regarding an update from the Department of Finance that came out. That was an extremely cautionary update that basically said, beware for budget cuts that are similar to or worse than the 2008 budget cuts. So that was just sobering for us to hear because we were expecting a 0% COLA and potentially expecting a -2% COLA. And now they're talking about a -5% COLA being much more realistic and potentially a -10% COLA in future years
And defer, are they gonna defer payments?
and deferrals.
What does that mean?
So what they do is they basically are supposed to give you money in June and they wait to give it to you until the end of July. So as far as their books, they push the money down the road.
Yeah.
So it puts a stress on the district to have cash on hand. We're in a somewhat good situation compared to a lot of other districts because we do have those
Reserves.
funds in our reserve, but also because we have the maintenance funds that we could access in a very dire situation to cover costs because we're not getting revenues from the state. Because again, I mean, what they're saying is, what Liz is bringing up is the likelihood that the governor just says, we're not giving you your June money in June, we're giving it to you in July. Well, we still have to pay everything in June. So you just have to pay for it out of your own pocket. So then that means everything is delayed constantly, and it just keeps pushing further.
And they really don't tell you until they tell you.
Right.
That's
Crazy.
Yeah.
School finance, Carl.
Yeah, they did that.
So it's like, I'm not paying my bill.
The buckets of deferrals became greater and greater, and the time span between payments too,
Group.
it was hard. I mean, this district cut down everything. We
So
cut
what, months and
everything.
months of that?
Oh, years.
Years.
Yeah.
3 years.
They just won't pay?
We took 11% pay cut.
We did furloughs, we cut school days, they cut salaries. We had nothing, no music, no PE, I mean, there was nothing extra in this district.
I just didn't know how the money worked.
Diego, is given that this, at the state level, things are 3 times as worse, not here.
Not here.
But are you suggesting that that is on the table, what Liz just described?
Yes. What I'm suggesting is that I think, and the reason I wanted to have this special meeting was because I think we have an obligation to our bargaining partners and we have an obligation to our parents to make them understand how serious the situation is. What we don't want to find ourselves in is in a position in 6 months where we're late to thinking about how to make some of these decisions. So one thing that Liz mentioned is the idea of furloughs. So furloughs came about because districts started to basically they had their arms behind their back and say, we can't cut anything more. The only thing left we could cut is salary. And so at the time, the state and the Department of Education said, we'll let you reduce your instructional days from 180 to 175, and some districts went down as low to 170. This district was
Was it, what, I don't remember what year it was.
170,
Was the, how many, was the school year?
170.
Yeah.
no, it was 175,
I thought it was 170.
175.
There were a handful of districts that did go as low as 170. They had to
Yeah.
submit a
You
waiver.
gotta get a
Yeah,
special
we
waiver.
did
after
five
this.
days.
You went to
No.
170.
So when will, and this is for the next school year you're talking about?
Yeah, so what we have already done to reduce expenditures, even if we were to have a 5% reduction, is a substantial part of the way there. Now, if they come to us and say, you're gonna get a 5% COLA reduction, negative 5% COLA, I'll bring that to the board and I'll show you what that will do to our 3-year reserve. you'll say, this is serious, Diego, how else can we make reductions this year? And I have a package of reductions to think about. But what we have to decide among the 5 of yourselves and myself is how to engage with our bargaining partners so that they truly feel that they're part of the solution. That they have the voice and the ability to say, hey, this, we have history. We did that and that was a mistake. Versus, hey, we'd be willing to do this if you decided to do this. Because the one thing that's different about now versus 2008 is we have this whole public health concern that is causing us to spend money.
More money.
It's causing us to increase expenditures.
Yeah.
So we have to be cognizant of the fact that we need to come prepared in August with a really strong plan to safeguard the health of our students and the health of our employees.
Right.
And that's going to cost money,
Right.
and we have to budget for that. So if furlough days were something that the state of California authorized, then that would be a recommendation I could bring to the board to say that's one way of impacting or causing reductions in expenditures.
So the state has to authorize ideas of what you can do, otherwise you can't.
Yes and no. So there are some days, like we have some non-student days, but here's my concern about eliminating all the non-student days. We're asking teachers to dramatically change how they teach.
Right,
So
how are you gonna teach them?
we need time to train people. Here's an example of a recommendation I'll make to the board. I will recommend to the board that the last 9 days of school, which is June 1st through June 9th, we implement, or June 10th, we implement what's referred to as online enrichment studies, and here's why. If I train every single teacher for 1 day in this district, the cost of training those teachers is incredible. It's an extremely high cost. We know we need to train teachers more on Google Classroom. We know we need to train them more on Eureka Math and Benchmark Advance and Orton Gilligan. So I'm gonna recommend to the board that for the last 9 days of school, the 5 full days of the June 1st week and then the last 4 days of the June 7th week, that we transition back into student packets. And what it'll allow us to do is train our teachers during those days that we're already paying their salaries. What that does for us is it greatly reduces any cost we have to incur in August, because the other time we could train teachers would be in August, but I'd have to pay them, or we would get very low attendance if there was no pay for that. Doing it in June means that you're providing them the training while they're on the clock. And our students get a teacher into the next year that's prepared and trained and feels effective in what they're doing. And the product goes up.
How are those packets monitored? Are you saying the kids stay home during this time?
They're already home, yeah,
Okay,
they're
It was
not
like
coming
this
at all.
June, right?
This,
Yeah, we're
Okay.
talking about 4 weeks.
oh, I get what you, I thought you were talking about next
No,
year. I
this
got it.
year.
Oh, that makes
4
perfect
weeks from
sense.
now.
Right
That
now.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
4 weeks from now, we've done the legwork on this,
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
contacted all of our trainers. They're all lined up and ready to go. We've been working with our teacher union for about 2 weeks on this, so we have calendars for each school, setups for each school. And obviously I wanted to bring it to the board's attention. The key is, if we look at this year and say, okay, there's 24 more days of school, teach. Because right now, we're just doing the best we can. We're trying our best, we're setting everything up, but we're not highly effective right now. We know that. We have kids out there who don't have computer access, we know that. We're gonna fix that, that's one of the other items tonight. Allowing teachers to have this time to do professional development will greatly improve our whole next school year. It'll be a game changer.
I would be a huge proponent of that,
Yeah.
observing what I observe, not just with us, but out there in the world and reading. I mean, I sent you that article. That's a school district that was like 4 weeks, they decided to shut down for that reason.
And what we would do is the advantage we have is we have companies that have done this training for us and it's tied to our core techs. And so we would be able to schedule it in a way where the groups of teachers participating are small, in the 15 to 25 range. So even though it's happening virtually or with social distancing, the benefit's really high to the staff. And we're getting more, as adults, we're getting more familiar with it, more comfortable with it. It's one example of how we're trying to think about the mission, which is educating all of our students, but also being realistic about how the cost of educating our students gets factored into accomplishing that mission. And then we have other, Steve and Jan, and I think Liz, maybe you said it, we didn't have PE, we didn't have art, we didn't have,
Music, we did
would, it is
libraries.
It was terrible.
It was horrible.
And so you approach those as you need to, basically. I wouldn't put those on the table until it was time to start talking about those kind of reductions.
Can you quantify, not what would come out of, our bond funds, but out of the operating budget?
Yep.
What it is going to cost to open up, Rancho Santana? Because one of the things I'm concerned about, or I think you have to put everything on the table, but if that were gonna cost us $500,000 to open, should we delay opening it for a year? You know, things like that.
That's a good suggestion. I haven't thought about that.
I think, well, the vast majority of the funding that went into building that school is paid for, it's there, it's dedicated to that. I would fall on the side of wanting to open because I think you always have your public reputation and public confidence as
We have
being
a
a
fiduciary
major
responsibility.
consideration, and I think when you build a school, for me, you open the school.
Yeah, we have a
When you
fiduciary.
don't open the school, there's a cost that goes there too. I mean, there's a cost, there's an actual dollar amount of paying staff to go in and
Right.
monitor and check and keep and I think what the coronavirus pandemic has caused us to do is to say, okay, when we open Rancho Santana School and students flow from the other campuses, then staff will follow the students. So we won't hire, in a regular budget scenario, we may spend $500,000 to open a school. With the coronavirus, it might be down closer to $50,000, $100,000 to open the school in additional cost, because when enrollment drops at other schools as a result of that school opening, the staff hours will follow the students.
And two, wouldn't it help, I mean, I think it's a good suggestion, we have to look at everything, but I think it would be good to open the school in the interest of physical distancing, right? Cause you'll have some,
It'd be easier to spread
to
kids out.
spread them
than to
out,
say,
so I can
yeah.
see,
We'll have an extra facility.
yeah, that makes sense.
I think what we're responsible for doing is, when we open that school, is thinking of every way possible to make efficient the use of our resources. Because I think Rob's point is, yeah, let's debate whether or not that's how we wanna spend $500,000, if that's how if we determined it was $500,000. And we can bring that to the board more than likely in October of this year. So we would just need a few months to get through the planning process for the other schools to open, and then make a decision in September and October regarding how much the cost is.
And I think what's important to differentiate also for staff and the community is that, because if we start spending money, because we have money that we're getting back from the state on the bond projects. And so for them to see, oh, well, you're buying portables, but you're cutting staff. Why not use that money for to keep your staff? So we definitely have to have them understand there's a clear delineation of funding for one purpose, and it can only be spent for that.
Right.
We can't transition. It would be wonderful if we can transition it to keep our people, but unfortunately, we get it for buildings.
The public doesn't understand,
And
so
so,
I think it's
but
gonna be
even staff,
important, right, it's gonna be important to like
but even staff are
publicly,
like, well, why are we buying portables?
right,
I don't understand, we're laying off people,
Right.
and let's not buy portables, let's just, use the ones we have or fix them up, and it's like, it's not that, we
But-
just,
And but certain monies can only be spent for certain things.
but even our staff are still don't understand the concept of
Right.
where we're getting money and what its purpose is.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but he's, in my opinion, already got that covered. By meeting
Yes.
with the various bargaining units ahead of time
Yeah,
and saying, look, these things are discussed with them.
yeah.
This money cannot be used for this, it can
Yes.
only be used, and then you wanna play up the monies that we can use, like we met today with the playground people, the guy that put in the new, those schools are gonna love that.
Awesome.
Those schools, I mean, flat out,
But I'll be honest though, Steve, is that the unions may know, but it's not disseminated
The public.
to the
well, I don't know
rest,
about the public,
the
but
rest of,
The
and not
employees.
everybody goes to a union meeting.
True.
So
Yeah.
they start with the whole rumor and the
You're right.
gossip, and that's the thing, let's be,
I still
you know-
say that's the place to start.
it is,
In
and
the
it's,
past, that's one of the things that I've noticed superintendents don't do.
well, nobody
The
wants
last-
to
Well, no.
start conversations about cutting the
No,
unions.
but that's important, because to me, that gains trust
Right.
of the bargaining units. We're not hiding anything from you. Our cards are on the table. If you have a question about blah, 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 now's the time to ask it.
Right. But
You know,
it's hard to
I don't
cut your
see-
own people, it's like, cause I had to live through it at the high school.
Oh, I know.
And when they tell you, they come to you and you say, we need to cut 800,000 from classified. And you're thinking,
Mhm.
okay, so where do we start? How do you pick which people need to go?
Mhm.
That's
you know,
tough, that
it is
part's
tough.
tough.
And as far
But
as having partners involved, it's difficult, I've lived through it, it's not one thing you ever really know how to even begin the conversation or even, start selecting people for this, because for them to be unemployed and devastating their families, losing their homes or losing, so
But
many
if-
people lost so much back then,
But
you know,
if the superintendent's kinda explaining, like, if we get a little bit ahead of the.
I'm not saying it's gonna be
Right.
good, but it's gonna be a lot better if you just
Right.
spring this on them and say, we got 800,000,
What are
right
your
off the bat.
ideas, right?
If they've been built up and, hey,
Right.
this is the issue and this is why it's a problem.
Right.
Nobody likes to do this, but if you have to, you have to. You just don't have a choice. And springing something on somebody, believe me, I can remember, is the last thing you wanna do. Is the last thing, because then that's what causes distrust.
a lot of, just this conversation, my household talks about it, but I have access to articles that most people would not have access to. We know what we hear in the news, but how does it translate into school finance? And what does that mean to your everyday employment, your district? And what decisions have to be made? And those are tough decisions, because at the end of the day, you gotta know how to still be able to keep the lights on, teach children. And with what staff do you need to do that with?
Yeah, Diego, what's the worst you're hearing? Because I think you sent this to us before or in another format.
Yeah.
And, I look at this, we're the fifth largest economy in the world. And I'm just looking at our sources of revenue, this is at the state level. So just rounding, I'm gonna say we've lost 25% of our revenue. So I'm confused as to, it seems to me, in theory, we wouldn't lose 25% of our revenue because the rainy day fund has been spent on coronavirus stuff. So what is the worst case that you think you should model?
What we're modeling is three different budgets. So the first budget is the one we already made, which is the 0% COLA this year, the 0% COLA next year. The second model is a -5% COLA this year and a -5% COLA the next year. And then the last model is a -10% COLA this year and a -10% COLA next year. I don't think it'll end up there, but we have to know what it would look like if that's where it ended up.
I'm glad to hear it, because I even think that's late, but,
And then Jan,
Yeah, I've had my hand up,
Oh,
so,
sorry.
yeah, I think because we're trying to respect each other's time. There's a couple of things that when I was reading this, and, one of the things that Liz alluded to, or so did Steve, and that is the trust between our bargaining unit and our community. Steve and I and Liz have been on the other side, and so we know the trust factor, and so is Carmen. It's a big deal. And in this new website, I would like to see a column that puts articles from CTA, articles from CSEA,
Good idea.
and articles from EdSource and from the school board and access.
That's a good
And
idea.
access, and I would like them to be able to read, if they, in other words, we're not hiding anything from them.
Perfect,
There's nothing to hide, because we have nothing to hide.
right.
You know, we're reading the same things that everybody else is reading, and there's nothing to hide here. It's all the same stuff.
That's a great idea.
Liz, if you can think back to 2008, either at the high school or when you started your tenure here a little bit closer to, was it 2011, 2012? 2012. One thing that we are looking at is, okay, we have a recent retiree, our library media specialist at Calaveras, awesome, it's a big loss to the district, Ms. Stanton. And so one thing we're looking at is we know we have employees who are on the layoff list. So one thing we're looking at is greatly focusing on hiring people within our own unit.
Right.
Because if we promote somebody who's in a different job classification, then that job classification opens up, now this person comes back into the position. And so we meet with CSEA and HESTA in the next 2 days to go over this presentation, to talk more. Because that's one easy, simple strategy that will start rehiring. Because this position is technically, it's not something somebody would bump into.
Right.
But if we select one of our current staff who applied for this job, and we do have current staff that applied, well, now that bump does come back in.
Yeah.
So that's the way I lead, that's because I think about people, I think about the 25
I see what
FTE and
you're
say, how
doing.
can we get them back in? How can we give them a path to come back in? So we're looking at those things as well, not just give them the letter and, we'll see you down the road. It's, okay, let's think on our feet. This position opened up, okay, great. Do we have internal applicants? Great, let's bring them in, let's train them, let's support them to take that position. Now one of the other staff that's on the layoff list comes up.
And our classified are eligible for unemployment benefits, right?
That's right.
Because some people are inquiring and they were told no.
We'll have to,
And so,
we'll have to send something out.
so I just, so if they're being told no, there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be very nervous. The people that have just gotten hired that know, okay, I've been here 2-3 years,
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to go.
Yeah.
And so to be told I won't be able to collect unemployment is extremely stressful. So
I'll
if
add
that is incorrect,
I'll add that to our meeting.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
please, yeah.
We'll make it clear.
It's definitely, and this was a 12-month employee, that was told, that, just to speak, so.
Yeah,
I'll tell you
let's
later.
see what-
I'll tell you
let's
later.
not-
Going back
let's
to-
not
No,
go.
that.
Going back to
Because
Jan's,
Sure about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going back
Sure
to
about
Jan's
that.
suggestion, which I really liked about transparency,
I just
Can
think we need to be very, very transparent.
can we also think about, and you've done a really good job about all the positive articles in Benito link. Can we also think about a just very honest, if we get to that point, which we probably will when it's time, to just publicly after,
well,
We
just
decide
kind of like
just
the
to say-
synopsis that you gave us.
Right.
This is
Right.
what, the news is.
just letting you know, right?
If we, as your board, get that information, I think everybody should be entitled to
Right.
the information because
public.
well, it's public, but it just brings you to a reality
Right.
that, okay, you know, it's coming. And it's not because, oh, we picked you, or we picked you,
Right.
or we, you know, it has
Well, we don't
nothing
wanna
to
get
do.
that us versus
That's
them.
exactly.
and
That's the last thing
Exactly.
we want,
And I
is the
think it
us
would be-
versus them.
It would be really nice to be able to tell our union partners in advance, like, look, when it's time to go public, I'd like to say that we met with you guys and that this was a collaborative and, you know, something
Nobody
to.
wants to be in this mess, but we
No.
all, the whole world is, and
Right.
we're in this mess together.
Yep.
And it's not, you know, we're not pointing fingers, we've gotta figure this out.
It's not just gonna be schools either.
No,
I
The
know.
city of Hollis, I mean,
Yeah.
the counties,
Yeah.
I mean,
all
it'll
manip-
be crazy.
City of
Yeah.
Salinas already.
Yeah, they
it's
started
gonna-
making
it'll be
cuts.
crazy.
City of San Jose already too.
it's gonna hit everybody.
Yeah, so I just want us to be very transparent, very
I like that.
open.
Yeah.
And I really commend Superintendent Ochoa for
Doing that.
having these open meetings with our union partners and, cause that's what we have to be. And if we could, when we get our new website going, if we could have articles from, you know, the different groups, I think that would just show our open transparency, we have nothing to hide.
Right, and the information isn't being produced or augmented by Hollister School
Yeah,
District.
CPA uses
It's
school
It's
services.
right out there.
what's being given, you know.
There's nothing to hide here.
So, yeah,
Well, I think it's a great idea. I'm just trying to think where else. We don't own any vacant land anywhere that we can sell, right?
Landling?
Yeah. What happened to those 7 acres?
yeah,
I don't think we wanna give that up.
I know.
So, Dave, do you know where we are with the reserves? Where are we down to?
Well, I think at our June meeting, I'll be able to give you an exact number, because we're still tallying all the costs, and the last 2 months have been
Yeah, it's.
totally unpredictable, so
Right.
I just need another 6 weeks or so to get those all tallied for you.
You can't do that right away?
I could do
It's
it,
not here, it's not here.
it would be wrong. I could give
I'm
it
being
to you,
sarcastic.
but it would be wrong. Yeah, just because we're still incurring those costs.
Right.
And part of what we're also doing right now is we're in an application process through FEMA,
Oh,
where FEMA will actually reimburse entities like the Hollister School District for expenses that exceed $131,000 combined. So we're working right now between our health department, our nutrition department, our facilities and maintenance department, and our student services department to wrap all of our expected purchases into one big bundle.
okay.
And we feel strongly that they'll reimburse us, which could be as much as 75% of the cost.
Oh, wow.
So I wanna make sure that I have that nailed down before we make those purchases, so we're doing a lot of coordinating right now. Because we're gonna need to spend a significant amount of money on hand sanitizer
When we
and
start school.
Clorox wipes and soap and, you know, when we come to the next school board meeting, I'll have a presentation on the scenarios that we've developed. So we basically went in with 3 scenarios. Reopening completely online, which is a possibility. Somehow the medical community says you still can't bring kids on campus. Reopening with half the kids on campus and half the kids home, which is a possibility. And then trying to reopen with all the kids on campus with social distancing, which is, it's a big challenge.
I don't know how you do that in a classroom.
They'd have to relax the number of feet, they couldn't say 6 feet, they'd have to reduce it down to 2 feet or 3 feet.
What about
It
kids
just
wearing
won't fit.
masks?
That's definitely a cost that we're expecting to
It's
have
probably
to
gonna
incur.
happen
And we would
anyway.
have to provide the masks?
We would ask our parents to send them, but we would have to have enough on hand every day.
And I don't know how your special ed kids are gonna do with that.
With the mask? Are you
Some
kidding?
of them, yeah.
Yeah.
All of them, yeah.
Anybody.
Well,
It's
yeah.
hard.
I know,
Your lunch might hard.
It gives
I know,
headaches,
yeah.
it gives headaches.
I've been like this as a warning.
Yeah, so there's
Especially with the elastics.
Yeah.
the elastics
Charlie.
get you.
This would not
Big time.
The School Nurses Association, we walked our Rancho San Justo campus today with myself, both of our school nurses, the Director of Ed Services, the principal of the school, both assistant principals, and the principal of Gabriel Hills HDLA. And we walked that campus to sort of just get in as many rooms as we can and ask the question, how would this work if kids were here? And I'll use the school nurse's office, which is brand new, as you know, that
Right.
building is new, and it's a somewhat big office, but because of the physical location of the desk that's built in, there can really only be 3 kids in there at any time with her. Currently, there can be as many as 7 kids in there, because
Yeah.
she's got all the chairs, but
Yeah.
now they can't sit next to each other.
Right.
The school nurse organization is getting ready to put out a guidance that says, when a child has suspected symptoms of coronavirus, you need to have another room that they're completely separate from other children, which means we'll have to send our school nurse until that parent comes to pick
We
it
have
up.
several kids.
If you have multiple kids, they can be in the same room if they're all symptomatic,
Okay.
but they can't be in other rooms, and, and so I just wanted to give that small example, because now that school no longer has a meeting room for IEPs.
But if that kid was in say, I'm in the classroom and I start with the temperature or whatever, and I've just basically exposed the rest of the kids in the class and the
That's right.
teacher.
Contact tracing.
Do you think we're gonna get to the point where they do the thermometer thing?
That's what I was
We're,
thinking
we're
too, when
preparing,
gonna have to
we
purchase
are
those.
including that in our purchase.
Okay.
We are including that in our
Quick
purchase.
thermometers is-
Here's why, if they tell us we have to, we wanna be prepared to do it. We don't wanna go into a situation where we say,
And you can't find them.
you won't be able to buy them.
Yeah.
They'll be unavailable.
Yeah.
So, but again, I don't wanna pay full price for them, I wanna get the FEMA reimbursement if possible.
Yeah.
Get our district in the queue so that each one of these purchases that we make has the smallest impact possible on the true mission, when we're not also having to safeguard the health, and I mean like the medical health of children, is educating kids, is having curriculum, is having lessons, having teachers that are there to teach, because the other thing is, if that happens, that teacher goes out for 14 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
For
it's
the whole
not
class?
just the whole class, the teacher goes out. So when that happens, then we have to be able to shift, and I can't hire a substitute teacher for 14 days for a class they've never taught, that has to be taught all online, with half the kids potentially sick at home.
Right,
Because they're also not healthy at home,
Right.
they're sick at home.
right.
So you have to change the work you give them, because you can't tell a sick child, hey,
You gotta
do
this.
6 hours of homework every day. Well, that's not empathetic to children, so. We're thinking about all those things, we're spending time. As I discussed with the board at our last meeting, I've split the principals into 3 different groups. Last week was our first set of meetings, this week is our second set of meetings. Next week, we bring our CSEA and HESTA partners in to start attending the meetings with us. So we've done all of the kind of clunky figuring things out. Now we're gonna bring our partners in to help us refine and think about the details, the small details that factor into how to make distance learning a possibility for students. We're weeks ahead, folks. We really,
Yeah, it sounds
truly
like it.
are weeks ahead.
Good.
But within that planning, if you're, taking into consideration your cuts and reductions and where they have to be made, right?
And we'll be prepared to do that, but we won't jump the gun on those things either. Because I think that's what our employees will expect of us, is to say, you made the right decision when you needed to make it, but you didn't rush
Jump
into
to-
something
rush to
and
it, yeah.
then regret it later, and not have thought through what the impact of that decision is.
I just wanna make sure, because at our next school board meeting, could you actually have, and I forgot our new finance person's name. but-
Lisa,
Lisa, a cash analysis, just here's how much cash we have, here's how much is in the bond funds, because I wanna take that out.
Yeah.
Because, and have we collected, been posted with our property tax revenue yet? And were we impacted by that, they're allowing, property taxes to be deferred,
Right.
did that impact us? Cause I don't wanna be in a position where we have to go to the county and borrow money while we're waiting for the state and their deferred payment. I just wanna know what we're going to,
And back in the day, we used to borrow money.
I know.
Question
and-
about
We used to
that.
take out loans.
When you guys borrowed money, does that come with interest?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, they don't do it for free.
It's
So
a
I'm just
loan.
gonna ask a double. So then the state says, I'm not giving you your money, but they don't give any extra.
They won't give you the
And you
interest,
gotta
no.
go
So you
get-
have to go get a loan,
Yeah.
I forgot what the name of the loan used to be
Well,
called.
the interest rate would be low, right?
Yeah, 20 million,
They're always
yeah,
up to interest
Wow.
rate.
But still,
I know.
What the county is encouraging us to do is to have every district in the county, including ours, apply for what's called a dry period loan resolution that we would bring to the board and a temporary borrowing of funds within the district resolution. And what that would do is it basically allow us to maximize our options. So if and when we get a deferral, we have those resolutions already approved, so we're not scrambling to call special
Right.
meetings or
It's like a line of credit.
it's a
well,
safe,
back then it
it's a
was a
safe,
tram, I think they were called tram.
the tax revenue anticipation,
Yeah.
And that's for when, what Rob just mentioned, the receipts are down, then you do it as
Right.
a revenue anticipation, so.
Yeah.
So the county has more money available?
The county office of ed is in the position to give advisement to districts about how to prepare for these kind of budget uncertainties. And what they're saying is that every single district in the county in May should adopt these two resolutions. We don't have to use them.
No.
Adopting it does not obligate us to use them.
Right.
But
You have
if
them
we
there
get to
ready
that
to go.
situation,
Yeah, it's
we'll be
ready to
prepared.
go.
Yeah.
You
So
don't have
again,
to
it's just one of those things where
be
where
proactive and
it lets
Yeah,
the
because you have
public
to get
know,
your funds
lets our
out
employees
before you
know we're on the ball.
And I'm gonna ask more naive questions, but the county has enough money for all the districts?
Well, it's different for each district, so, and the funding formula for each district is dependent on the makeup of the district. So we have a district in the county, Aroma San Juan, that's likely going to go into basic aid funding, so they're kind of in a whole other category. And the funds that we have in our reserve are the funds that we've talked about tonight as basically being that cushion for us in the event that the bottom really did fall out
Okay.
and the governor said, hey, we're doing a 60-day deferral and you're getting a lot
Oh
less
my
money.
God.
Right, and they could say that, they
yeah.
could say that, so if that were to happen, we have our cash, we have our reserves on hand to be able to cover the budget for the next couple, to meet payroll.
but that's what I went to cash analysis for, because what is the absolute dollar amount of our reserves?
A lot worse than.
And,
Yeah, and Aroma.
because I think we're there. I mean,
South side.
certain things just don't make sense to me. I was on the county supervisor meeting today, and they were going through their anticipated revenues. And we as a county, in general, we rely on property taxes to fund everything.
Right.
Whereas other counties, maybe Napa, because they have, or, Santa Clara, where they have a lot of revenue sales, they rely more on sales tax, or actually they benefit from both. So they were going through how has COVID-19 impacted them. Their projections for property taxes are actually a little bit higher. They're going, well, we don't see property values falling, so that's why they can project that. Their sales tax numbers are barely, they're only down 200,000, and I'm going, that doesn't ring true to me, because I know one thing, I'm not commuting anymore, so I'm not buying gas at Safeway. And we're definitely not going out to dinner like we used to, right? So, I can go through all of these things, plus you have all these restaurant and hotel workers and stuff, and others that are laid off, and people contract, so I just don't believe it. I do believe these figures here from the
Right.
state, because of, what I'm thinking, so.
If you look on page 63, because when I was reading it and I was thinking, and it says here that federal revenue will probably be our only source of, in a positive direction, that, we might get any money from. And, I don't mind, crafting a letter. I've done it already individually myself, and I've gotten responses. But I think we need to nail our people, our representatives that are in Washington. And if you would allow me, I would create a letter and to Feinstein and to Harris and to Bonetta, because they've gotta come through for us, we need help. And that's the only place we're gonna get some money, is through the federal government. If you allow me.
I think it's worth a shot.
And the board of supervisors
Yeah.
drafted a letter and approved it, I believe, to send to Governor Newsom.
Yeah,
Would you
but
be able to-
Newsom doesn't have the money.
Yeah, but these are at the, you know,
He doesn't have any money, he's the one that doesn't have money.
The
Yeah.
concept was reaching out to,
Right.
It's something we could definitely consider at our next board meeting as well.
Alright, well, I'll have it crafted and you guys can look at it, alright.
That's fine.
Just make sure, Jan, that you send it to me so I can agendize
Oh,
it.
absolutely, and it will not be political or anything like that, it's just merely a
It's just
matter,
us begging.
it's just, yeah, well, we're begging.
Yeah.
Rural community, we
Right.
need funds.
Because I think we all know, because we've been through having children go through school systems, when money does come in, it's going to go to our healthcare system, it's going to go to first responders, it's gonna go to police, fire, EMTs, nurses, and we know
We're that,
what happens with education.
right?
They'll just say, make it happen. Continue to make it happen, so our advocacy is very important.
Yeah, and we have, you said 800 special ed students?
835.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, real numbers next time if you would, because that's where my brain really works on this stuff, is to see the absolute.
And I'll have them for you.
Thank you. So, any more discussion on that? 8B, district needs and priority goals.
District needs and priority goals, as the board is aware, I have an annual obligation to provide you with a summary of the district's needs and a summary of the district's, what I'm recommending to the board as priority goals. And at the end of the presentation, I'll have a recommendation on what our next step should be. So I'll start off by stating the obvious: increased academic achievement in English and math and ELD is the district's highest priority. Continuing to make learning accessible to more and more children and to support children in their growth is our number one priority. I put them into categories, so category 2 is our staff growth and development. We have incredible people that work for this district, but we're now facing a situation where people can't do the jobs that they went to college to do. People can't do the jobs that they've been doing for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. The job has now changed because of coronavirus.
Right.
And it might only be for a year, or it might be longer, but I don't wanna lose a year for those kids. So we have to prioritize training staff. I mentioned earlier today about the idea of training our teachers during that June 1st to the June 10th. That includes our classified. The trainings will include our classified. They will receive training on those days as well. Because they're often left to the side and expected to just catch up at the end and figure out how to
Yeah, no,
help
our
teach.
aides should be critical, just learning, just side by side with the teachers that they help.
That's right. That's right. And technology training for all of our secretary of support staff. Because now being able to use those forms and those Google Sheets and that's all becoming more important day by day. We'll give training in Google Classroom, Eureka Math, Benchmark Advance, Footsteps of Brilliance, Constructing Meaning, Advancement via Individual Determination, which is also referred to as AVID, Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, also known as PBIS, Capturing Kids' Hearts, Behavioral Supports, particularly for children with special needs, Social Emotional Learning, and Co-Teaching. So I wanna pinpoint the Footsteps of Brilliance as an example of a program that is driven by professional development. We started the Footsteps of Brilliance program in mid-September because of the purchasing process was delayed. And I ran a report yesterday. I chose a school, I chose Sarah Vista School. From the middle of September until December 31st, so that's 3.5 months. The school had 1.3 million words read. Okay, that was a baseline for me. Then I ran the report from January until March 13th, which was the last day before we went out for coronavirus. The school had another 1.5 million, so it grew incrementally. As soon as we went to online learning via Footsteps of Brilliance, the packets, we started to provide more training to schools, school principals and staff, and to monitor. And since March 14th until today, the school's read more than 4 million words.
Wow.
In a 7-week span. And those numbers are the same at every single school.
Really?
Dramatic increases. So some things have taken a nosedive because of coronavirus. Others have greatly improved, but it's tied to professional development. If teachers don't know how to go in and pull a report that tells them they call it the super secret code if you have a kid that age, and it's basically little animal icons. So it's the alphabet, but it's like turtle, jaguar, bat,
The connection.
cat. They remember that really
Yeah.
easy, so especially when you're starting them when they're little.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, if you tell a child, why haven't you logged in? Oh, I can't remember my code. Well, in Footsteps of Brilliance, there's a simple 1-page report that tells you the secret code for every child in your class. So while you're teaching them, you just say, here's your code. Great, you're in the system, go. And we're basically getting about 95% of our students are logging in and using the
Really?
program right now.
95%?
I mean, the numbers are staggering, Steve, the numbers that have gotten on the program. But if you go to all of our school sites, you'll see it weaved into everything. There's an alert at the top of the screen on the website. The messages, I've sent email messages to all the families. The principals have called families to explain how to use the program. The teachers are promoting it, and you'll see immediate, because you can do the same report for the month of February, and you'll see out of 26 kids in the class, only 9 were on the program. In March, April, or the end of March, April, and May, it's 95%.
Wow.
And the kids that don't use it are the ones we know lack the internet access. That's the stumbling block, and that's our next presentation. Under the banner of social emotional supports, we'll establish a district-wide social emotional curriculum. There's a product that I'm strongly recommending we adopt for next year. It's an online program called Sanford Harmony. Our Hollister
Sanford or Stanford?
Sanford, S-A-N-F-O-R-D. I encourage you all to go online and log in at home and test it out. There is a very wealthy benefactor Mr. Sanford, who decided to devote a substantial portion of his wealth to the concept of social emotional learning. And he gifted National University with this sizable amount of money. And they basically hired a team of principals and teachers to develop, and counselors to develop this curriculum. And it's absolutely free to every district in the United States.
Oh, wow.
There's no cost.
Wow.
The program comes with a fully online component with video lessons for every single lesson. It comes with printout lessons for every single lesson.
Wow.
It starts in kindergarten and it goes through 6th grade.
Wow.
So what the coronavirus is causing us to do now is to think and acknowledge the importance of social emotional learning every day.
So the teachers are building in that piece into their curriculum.
That's awesome.
But in this district, we have a habit of buying the free version of things that you don't get the printouts, you don't get You don't get any of the more expensive tools,
Yeah.
and what happens with Sanford Harmony is it's all there for you. It is all included as part of the sign-up process for that.
Is it updated?
It's updated, it's online, it's every single student at every single school will have access to it next year, so it's building in that equity and that consistency that we want.
Wow.
It's just one component of the social emotional learning, but it is a very important one. You'll see there that I specifically mentioned district-wide response manuals for trauma, and I wanna discuss why that's important. When we looked at our data, we saw that suspensions were sky high in instances where children came from home backgrounds where they were experiencing trauma, our foster youth, our homeless youth, because their reactions to things that happened to them were so unusual that a person who hasn't received training in how to help children who are experiencing trauma, they say, can you take that off your face? And then the student looks at you and makes a funny face and turns around. Well, if I'm not trained in trauma-informed practices, I go walk around and I get in your face and I say, excuse me, miss, please take that off your face, I won't ask you again. And suddenly you call me the F word. Well, now I want you suspended because you used the curse word towards me, when in fact, your parents got thrown out of the house last night and you slept in the parking lot. You slept down the street from the school. And I think it's important that our staff receive training about that, because we do have high incidence in schools where kids come to school and bring with them trauma, and we need to be able to recognize it, and we need to be able to work differently with those kids. The same thing goes with suspensions. I want every single school to have the same set of procedures if and when a child is going to be suspended. The same forms, the same phone calls, the same system, so that it's not willy-nilly, and at one school, the secretary calls you, at another school, nobody calls you, your child sits in the office all day, at another school, there's no paper trail, so really formalizing it and coming up with a system to better track how we're dealing with student discipline on campus.
Excellent.
And the last one is parent engagement.
Yeah.
We have a school that is renowned for parent engagement. The Dual Language Academy, Hollister Dual Language Academy is without a doubt the best school I have personally in 22 years ever seen at engaging parents.
Oh, yeah.
Their parents are highly engaged, their parents are motivated, their parents are all in. And we need to take those practices and implement them at our other schools. Because we have the roadmap, it's right there. Parent meetings, parent contract, parent expectations, the volunteerism will have to change because of coronavirus, so parents will need to do volunteer work that's off campus for the most part to conform to all the requirements of making sure that people are not ill on campus and are respecting the 6-foot distance between kids. But as a district, we have to acknowledge that there isn't something different in the water at Hollister Dual Language Academy. It's actually based on the school and parents working together to define parent engagement and say, this is what parent engagement is. Attendance at meetings, fundraisers, and that's a very important component. In addition to that, I've added the organizational continuity and consistency itself. One vision, one mission, one unified message. That will become very important in the next 12 months because we have to win the support of our community. We can't just send out an email to say school opens on August 17th. We have to have a very unified message about the program that we decide to implement and why we did that, and how it works, and what the benefits of it are, and what the school will do when children need more help, and how this district will pay its bills and keep people in their positions. But to me, it's a very important part of establishing one message for the district, one unified message. Distance learning, this is a big one. We'll have to establish what I'm calling an all means all policy. We don't leave any kids out. Low-income students, students whose parents are Spanish speakers, students who have anxiety disorders, students with special needs. All means all. Every child gets their education through distance learning if that's what we have to do. Right now, again, we're doing the best we can and we're to be celebrated for all the work we've done. But going into August, we want to have a great program that works for all of our kids. Student engagement, establishment of district-wide responses to low student engagement and attendance. So what we had this year was the beginning of that program, and I just want to build on it. Because we're gonna have to ensure that if we go to a model where half the kids are on campus at a given time, what will happen is, I'll recommend to the board that we not bring all kids every day on campus, and here's why. So if I have a campus with 800 kids and 400 show up from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock, there isn't enough time for us to sanitize and to safeguard the health of children for the other half of the school to come. So we'll go to something that's more of an on and off model where you're at school certain days and you're not at school on other days. So the days that you're not physically at school next year, we want you working a full school day at home. If they're not free days, there's accountability and there's assignments and there's work to be done. So Steve, you taught history in this district.
Yep.
And Jen, you taught history in this district.
And language arts, yeah.
And language arts.
I did language arts early on.
And there was there's a certain amount of time in your instructional day where kids were needing to receive a lecture information or a PowerPoint or some means of knowledge or content from you as the teacher. And then there was a certain amount of time where students were working on something where you could engage them and check their work and help them. And then there was a certain amount of time where kids had to do things independently. Well, if you can only see kids 5 days out of 10 days, where in a regular school year you see kids 10 days out of 10 days, our teachers have to figure out how to reorient time so that when kids are at home, they're receiving the content. They're watching a pre-recorded video of a lesson. So that when they come to your classroom, that's the point in time where they're working on something where you can engage them and comment. And the two of you worked in education, you probably had classes of 35, 40 some years.
Oh, yeah, well,
When you
no,
got-
history usually always had 35.
Minimum.
So, our distance learning, if we go to social distancing and if we're told by the medical community, keep kids 6 feet apart, our middle schools, we can't have more than 16 kids in a class. That's gonna feel weird, it's gonna mean the other 16 are home, but you as a teacher, how many times did you teach a class with 16 kids?
Never.
Although I'll tell you what, Diego, just by what you've told me here, all of a sudden these ideas are coming through my brain.
Yeah.
I know exactly what I would do with this. It in some ways would actually be better if you approach it with the right attitude. I'm almost anxious to try it myself.
But here's
I
the
like
thing,
that.
but here's the thing, Steve, so now, you're able to give the when you have 35, you cannot give kids personal attention.
No,
There's too many
you're
children in
putting
the
fires
class.
out.
You're putting behavioral fires out, you're putting fires out, everything's taking longer to do, so now if we work it so that the classes are smaller, the time you have the kids, you can give, there's research that shows kids go the full day of school and the adults, they only spoke to one adult that day. Because in every class they went into, there were 32 kids, and they didn't get the direct attention from the teacher. That's gonna change next year. They're gonna get direct attention from their teachers on a daily basis on work that's relevant and important for them.
In the long run, they'll actually get way more time with the teacher, even if they were there 5 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, in the long run, doing it this way, they would have more teacher contact this way than the other way.
So the other part of the policy and the other part of the procedures that we'll set up is think about our primary schools. You know, we have 25 kids in a class and we go into first grade. That's a lot of little bodies and they need a lot of, they're falling on the ground, they're doing all kinds of stuff. So now I get that down to 12. So now I'm able to coordinate with the principal and with the intervention teacher and with our instructional assistants, because we're still maintaining a significant number of instructional assistant positions going into next year. Those can now be reformatted, so you could design the instructions so that art happens on the days the kids are at home. PE happens on the days the kids are at home. Elementary school, social emotional learning happens on the days the kids are home, because it's all online. When they're there, they can now do 2.5 hours of English reading and writing, when right now they're currently at 90 minutes. Math, they can do 2 hours or 2.5 hours of math, and in groups of 3 and 4. Socially distanced, but small group instruction with a higher teacher to student ratio. So we have to think about those things, and I'm putting it in here because I want the school board to know our district will succeed next year and the year after if we do a good job of developing strong, student-centered distance learning policies.
So I'm thinking about parents. And
I was
kids-
waiting, I've been
and
waiting for the
kids
parent
have to,
involvement piece.
like, be at home with their child.
But at least he gave me art and not math.
That's the other reason.
Cause I'm like,
You
oh,
know,
they gotta have art and PE.
You know, it takes two of us to pay our bills, you know, it's a two-person income
Right here too.
to pay,
Preach it to
you
the
gotta
choir.
pay, so that's what, you know, if the kids are going 3 days a week, 2 days a week, you know, how tough that's gonna be on parents, and then maybe if these kids are not really at home, now they're gonna be with the babysitter. So the expectation isn't really with mom and dad, it's gonna be with, you know,
Whoever's with the
whoever is going, wherever the child's gonna be.
Yeah.
Because if mom and dad still have to go to work.
But that's why I like his suggestion of giving the more, you know, the art and the PE wherever they're at, and if they're,
But
so I can
it's
see it
just-
working for the older
Yeah.
kids,
But
the
it's
younger
just
ones.
kind of, working even through our parent partners, you know, so that they can kind of start figuring out, okay, if my kid's gonna be with at daycare, what will that
But we
look
don't
like?
know, right? We don't
You
even
know?
know yet.
But more than likely, we're not gonna have kids at school every single day. He's already telling us that. So that's the thing, so if your kids are at daycare, pues quién se van a quedar,
Right,
you know?
oh, my mom's not gonna do any of this, right?
To do this, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And she
So,
shouldn't.
She's not, but we want your students to.
Right, and so I was gonna say to that, point too, with the parent involvement, and I was curious about that, is that I still feel like we need some more training orientation on, I'm having trouble right now, like, what do you mean you didn't get the assignment? I thought we turned it in. What do we have to press? You know, like, so, and that's me that speaks English, is somewhat tech savvy, you know, has a little bit of, and so I really am worried about our parents having a little bit of orientation in the summer or whenever, if we're gonna do this.
And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I spent time at Arl Harding with the principal this weekend. We had a conversation about one of the biggest gaps she sees now is that our parents need training on how to monitor what their kids are doing. And one parent called her and said, you know, I'm done.
Yes.
I'm working now 2 jobs. My husband's working all day long. I'm getting emails from this teacher, and this teacher, because the parent has multiple children. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm sobbing here.
Yeah.
I can barely make it through this phone conversation because I'm done.
And how many incidences,
Was that me?
in all seriousness, how many incidences like that do you think we have? We have 6,000 kids.
Rob, I've been talking to a lot of parents, and there's a lot of us who are frustrated.
Frustrating.
And it's not anybody's fault. And we're like, and not only do the parents, so I'm at work and like other parents, and my child is texting me, and my husband's working, and my other child is like trying to help, and then there was a whole technology thing, and my child now go to social emotional, my 4th grader is crying because she can't get on her Google class and she's gonna get in trouble and she can't, so I can just imagine, that's me, but I've talked to other people and they're also having these
So this is my point.
issues now.
This is my point to Diego in one of our private text exchanges at 6 a.m. or whatever. And, you know, I wanna find out, is there enough people there? Don't flip out on me everyone, but should we just say, you know what, we're done because it's not working, so that he has the time to figure it out and parents sort of get the relief, because this hasn't been figured out by, my observation is by anyone.
anybody.
And, you know, it's almost like a lost year,
Yeah.
to me, but we're trying, we're doing what we best, but if you got all the teachers and all the other educators in the room together and said, look, here's what the problem is, they know what it is, but you define it, so what's the level of possibility? Because I'm sitting here listening to all this, I'm going, you know, in private industry, you know, we build cubicles, right? That's how you put a lot of bodies in a tiny amount of space, so could you put 30 little cubicles in each classroom? Forget about the cost, but so that the kids are actually there at school and they're being led, and the parents are at work, because parents are going to go back to work.
Unless you have plexiglass.
Well, I mean,
Well, that's the thing, but then they're like, where's
But I
the
just-
teacher,
I
where's
just
the
wanna say one more
board?
thing.
It
What
would
if
be
you-
pretty hard to monitor 30 people.
What
I just wanna say one more thing
And that they're on
about
task.
what this, and then,
Oh,
and then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Jan, if it's okay, is that I think, to answer your question, no, I don't think we should give up. I think that if we're able to provide, speaking to that parent at R. Hardin, and like my experience, I just show me how. And I want her to learn this, and it's something we're gonna have to learn, and she is learning, but there's hiccups, just show me the parent how, and I'll be okay. So we're gonna have to figure this out. No, don't give up.
But we are going to, and what I'm suggesting in this plan is that we decide what is best for the district. Because what we've done so far is we've tried out a lot of different things, because we knew, since this was put on us in such an abbreviated amount of time, it wouldn't have made sense for us to just say, this is what you're all doing for the next 12 weeks. So right now, we're innovating. And it's very uncomfortable to innovate, because you have parents who say, my 4th grade teacher uses Class Dojo. I get emails 9 times a day asking to click on this logo, click here, touch this. That's what actually overwhelmed that parent, was the repeated emails, trying to get them more involved. And the parent is saying, what's going on? Then you say the 8th grade teacher only uses Google Classroom. The meetings are at 8 in the morning. My child's not a morning person. School didn't used to start until 8:30. Now they have to wake up at 8 to do this meeting. My child couldn't get in at that time. The meeting's over. So what we're starting to do is we're starting to develop best practices. So when we go into next year, our teachers will have the training they need on how we expect them to deliver those instructional pieces. And the other thing we have to decide is, if we have time for students during the day now devoted to English or reading, writing, and math, then let's spend the summer planning our instruction for social emotional learning and PE, art that can be at home. That's all pre-recorded, because the other stress that we've created is by putting so many things in live meetings. You know, I have a TK student here, and his teacher is incredible. Mrs. Camacho, you're the best teacher ever. And he loves you, and Teddy loves his experience. So my wife told me, you know, it is somewhat difficult because during live meetings, 4-year-olds are on these meetings, and they're still 4-year-olds. And sometimes, even, you know, using the program, you can mute students, but then you want them, you know, a TK teacher does choral response, and everybody repeat after me. And she said, you know, it's often not the child that interrupts the lesson, it's the siblings. It's the garbage disposal, it's the front and back door
The dog.
opening, it's the television in the background. And you do that with enough kids, and you have 12 kids on a call, now it's just come all the way down. So is the best practice 12 or 15? No, the best practice is 5, right? 3. So we're starting to develop that, and I wanted to include that in this presentation because of the importance of publicly acknowledging the need to have a district-wide set of expectations for how we do distance learning that is best for students.
I also wanted to contribute that, sometimes it's just a bad day. Maybe the internet goes out for a teacher.
Well, that's what I was wondering, what happens if that happens?
Well, when that happens, and now the teacher's trying to reschedule.
Yep.
Then it's not their fault that their internet goes out,
Right,
and that's gonna happen.
yeah.
Maybe, the child has a very bad day,
Yep. We know what.
which we experienced today at home. I broke a chair,
Oh.
it was terrible today. It was, and it was all day. And so those are gonna be sometimes, you know, you're gonna have with special ed, a kid will have a really bad day.
The one thing I will mention is that we've talked a lot about the idea of having kids have days at school and days out of school. We're getting closer to feeling comfortable saying that our moderate to severe and our mild moderate special day classes, we would expect them to be on campus and not rotate in that way.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah, that would be
the
good.
class
That makes
sizes are,
sense.
the class sizes are much
class
lower.
That
size
makes
anyway.
sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We are looking at the public health concern for the employees, because these employees will not be able to socially distance. So they'll have to somewhat take on that role of you gotta still be there with your child.
Like a parent,
You gotta hold the hand, you
You still
gotta
have
put
to
the
hold
arm
them
around
in, you
them.
know?
The kids are still
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
flail and have bad days and throw
Right.
chairs, and, you know, we're still gonna have to work with that. I wanted to organize these into 5 priority goals and share those with you, and those, they lay out pretty simply. The number 1 is to ensure the professional growth for all of our employees, to train all of our employees, to invest in all of our employees.
Or Superintendent Cho, I just wanna offer at my job, we have these face shields, and they're really simple plastic things that cover for in case, cause we have to interact with children and parents. And it could be a possibility if you put in your FEMA request, I don't know if you already did.
We are looking at those.
There you go.
And we're just waiting
And
on,
therefore, you can keep using them.
we're just waiting on the written recommendations from the school nurses organization.
Okay.
Because they're gonna really tailor it to school applications, and we think
Okay,
those will
good.
be on there.
Awesome.
Does it come with the
Yep,
head?
has a little head thing that goes around, and it's a little plastic, and it's really easy and not like this stuff.
how does it work with glasses?
My workers have glasses, and they, so you use
It's almost
the,
like a headband,
Oh,
it comes up on top.
but they did say it fogs a little bit,
uh-huh,
so you use that same,
yeah.
thing you would put on your glasses.
I think we're just gonna have a lot of employees who say, I've got a headache, you know, so we're gonna have to be okay with certain portions of the day, them doing this.
Yeah,
Them
Yes.
doing this, because they're, just throughout the day, we're figuring out it's a lot to have
It
something
is.
on your face all the time.
Constantly
It's
breathing
hard.
your own breath, and it's like, I was like, I need fresh air.
The
Oh,
breath,
yeah.
the breath mint industry is,
Oh, man.
Kip walks around with the pack.
There you go, holy moly.
And I just wanted one more thing on this, social distancing, just again, props to the teachers for, it's not their fault whenever issues were happening.
Oh, yeah, all
I
of
mean,
it.
I think all of them are doing, so I don't think you have the best teacher, I think that some of us maybe I'm gonna compete with you.
Yeah. I think they're all
Just
the
kidding.
best.
They're all
No,
awesome.
I've heard nothing, you know, from friends and that have children in the Hollister School District. They're
They're
just,
awesome.
they are completely just in awe of all of our teachers. I have not
Yeah.
heard a negative thing,
Yeah.
you
Me
know,
as well.
about how you're doing packets or the onlines. Everybody is amazed and happy and, you know,
Supportive.
it's, yeah,
How
very,
good, how good teachers actually are.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
good
think it's finally sunk in for some people.
We
Hey,
had,
this isn't an easy job.
And how their children actually
Yeah,
behave.
well, we appreciate that.
yeah, definitely.
we visited Calaveras School, and there's a teacher that works there, Mrs. Johnson, Catalina Johnson, and we were next door having a conversation with myself and Ken Wood, the principal, Janine Ostoya from Lad Lane, and Diana Herbst, and the four of us were in there practicing how to set up an elementary classroom for social distancing. And we just heard her, the whole time we were talking, she was next door filming herself for her students, because she wanted her students to see their classroom. So first of all, she left her house to come to her job, to go and film herself in her room, and it was like a theater production was happening. She was so over the top, engaged, performing for those kids, and you know, we're all got teary-eyed thinking about, you know, and she's just one of
Yeah.
many teachers who have kept this district moving forward. And I think what my priority goals is basically saying to the board is, we have to take things like that and say, let's bring those into an expectation for all,
Yeah,
Right.
so that it's not just some,
yeah.
it becomes an expectation for all.
No, we have great teachers.
David, can I ask you what could be a silly question?
Yes.
And I've never asked my wife this question, but how many kids learned like how to read or learned how to count from shows like Sesame Street or Romper Room or for me it was the Electric Company or you know things like that. I mean, I know with my own kids, they were glued always. They watched the same Sesame Street videotapes over and over again. And I'm just wondering, is there other thing? First of all, is there the equivalent of Footsteps to Brilliance for math? But you know what I'm going for? Because to me, the biggest thing we have is how do teachers create content and all the quality thing. But was Sesame Street effective?
Anecdotally, I think we all said, oh, I grew up on, I know I did, but I don't think it's replicable, especially for now, because at the time, how many options did your kids have to enjoy any kind of media? I mean, Sesame Street, PBS was.
4 channels in my house.
There were 4 channels.
6, 7, 12.
Yeah.
12
Right.
PBS.
And now,
200.
what's taken the place of some of those things is unfortunately video games. Video games there's research to show the incredible just growth across the video game modules, and so that research would be difficult to replicate, but I think you hit on Footsteps of Brilliance and the role that Footsteps of Brilliance is having and will continue to have, because these kids will go from grade level to grade level and still stay with the same program. That's the big benefit of us adopting it, is it becomes a 4 or 5 year program for these kids instead of my second grade teacher liked it, so we used it. No, it's district wide, and it's repetitive year after year in terms of the same process to
Does
get
your grandson
online.
use it? He does, and
Is
He
there,
loves it.
for autism, it's still,
Yeah,
it's easy
yeah,
for
he
them.
loves it.
Because my 3-year-old, I haven't introduced it to him, but I wasn't sure that it was
Yeah,
would
no, he
fit,
loves it,
you
he
know,
loves it, yes.
his disability.
Right, no, he loves it, he doesn't, he gets lazy on the speaking part sometimes.
So does mine. Yeah.
Cause it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, but, no, he loves it, yeah,
Okay.
he loves it.
Okay, I'm gonna use it.
You won't be disappointed. Under the banner of professional development and growth for all employees, we have the recommendation for the trainings that I discussed earlier, but the second bullet is very important too, is it's to implement a district-wide hiring process for all positions. Jan has mentioned this multiple times throughout the year of wanting our HR department to have a bigger role in helping us select staff and really closing the loop in our hiring process, so we hire the best people at the earliest time possible. Our HR department has filled the 13 positions on the certificated side that opened up this year, and we have 2 vacancies for next year.
Oh, wow.
13 filled with all really strong candidates, wonderful candidates. 2 vacancies, science at Rancho San Justo and science at Mays. And we're still promoting and recruiting, but Jan has multiple times correctly identified the need to have Erica involved in making sure that we only hire strong employees for the district because of the negative impact that hiring unqualified and untrained and people that are not a good fit. Under the banner of achievement, a district-wide early literacy plan. So what we'll go into next school year is a plan where we support early literacy in the same way at all of our schools. We've reduced the overall number of positions of instructional assistants, so we have to develop a plan that's equitable, that gets implemented. You all were very impressed, and so was I, to hear about the program that Lilia Espinosa put in place with her teachers. We're going to replicate that program at all of our schools.
Okay.
It's a wonderful, wonderful structure and program. A district-wide assessment plan tied to interventions. So similar to the comment you made, Liz, about facilities monies not being tied to staffing monies, there's certain monies that we have for intervention that we can't use for anything else. It has to be used for intervention. So we will still tutor children next year. Summer school, as you know, has gone online for this summer. So our kids are getting more familiar with that, so we'll continue to do that going into next year and tutor kids on Saturdays and after school and tutor them in summer. A district-wide instructional strategies and supervision plan. So one thing we wanna see in our classrooms is we wanna go into classrooms and see strong teaching practices in every classroom. We wanna go into 3 consecutive 4th grade classrooms and be able to identify the strong teaching practices that are happening. And we go into certain classrooms with teachers that need training, that don't know how to effectively engage kids and monitor learning and keep a very strong classroom environment. And then those are the teachers that don't return the next year because we don't believe that they made enough progress. What we haven't given them is we haven't given them a simple explanation of what constitutes good teaching. And then our principals need to be given a simple, clear plan of how to monitor strong teaching, how to get out of their office and go into classrooms in a supportive and positive way. So we plan to put that together. A district-wide blended learning plan, we've talked about that tonight. Implementation of Paxton Patterson STEM courses. I brought that to the board's attention at our last couple of board meetings. And then the implementation of advancement via individual determination and constructing meaning in middle schools. What's different about how we're doing both of those programs now and what we'll do next year is we will train every teacher at both schools in both of those programs before the school year starts. And what we have done in the past is we've trained small groups of teachers. So if there's 33 teachers at Rancho San Justo, only 9 have received the training. Well, you're not gonna have full implementation. Both of these programs, by the way, are considered the tops of the top, the best programs you can have. Constructing Meaning is a product that's put out by a company called EL Achieve, or English Learners Achieve. And the training is considered one of the best trainings that any middle school teacher can receive for English language development. So we're really, really excited about that. And the trainings are all set up and the funding is all set aside for that. So, yeah. In terms of addressing students' social and emotional health, a district-wide SEL curriculum, or social emotional learning curriculum, which we talked about tonight, Sanford Harmony. I'll recommend to the board that we put together a LCSW or LMFT district-wide position The district received verification today that the county of San Benito, in conjunction with our district, received a pretty substantial grant that will support counseling services at all of the schools in the county, to include Southside, North County, the High School District, the Roma San Juan, and the Hollister School District. It isn't very clear exactly how that's gonna lay out, because we have to meet a couple more times. Now that we've received the money, we have to divvy up the time and the staffing. But in addition, we're working with San Benito Behavioral Health and with the county office on bringing on additional counselor services to the district. And I did tell the board at our last meeting, we have received verification that we'll have 4 counseling interns who will work in our district next year. So we need a person to coordinate all of their efforts. You actually, when you have interns, you need to have somebody who mentors them.
Right.
So we need that position. So this is a way for us to spend $100,000 to receive $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 worth of service to our students. So we'll need to prioritize that. In addition, implementing.
But Diego,
Yep.
can you define LCSW and LMFT for me?
You wanna take this one?
The
It's your
LCS
business.
This is yes, this is what we do. The LCSW is more specific to social work path,
No, what does it stand for?
licensed clinical social worker.
Got it. Okay.
LMFT is,
Licensed marriage family therapist.
yeah, it's a different path, and I thank you for putting in the social worker, because before, our district only had the LMFT opportunity. And social workers are also trained in counseling and therapy. And I would even say if there could be consideration of even some MSW experienced people who,
Masters in social work.
right, masters in social work who don't have the license, but maybe have a lot of experience.
Who can do some of
Yeah.
the small groups.
Thank you.
Thank you. Professional development related to and implementation of positive behavior intervention supports, capturing kids' hearts, behavioral supports, and social emotional learning. In addition, the establishment of Saturday academic supports. These would be online supports too, because part of what we're thinking about doing is we're thinking about having some deep cleaning happening at our schools, so that on Mondays we come back. So we're still trying to figure out the right times for schools to open and close so that we can get that going. But we're still gonna have kids who are behind, and we need to continue to tutor them, otherwise they'll fall further behind, and we don't wanna have that. And then in terms of public confidence in our school system, we have to establish and promote and communicate the district-wide sanitation and social distancing plan. It has to be visible, it has to be public, we have to train staff and students and parents how to respect it. And then we have to make district grounds improvements. We have a somewhat unusual reason, but we have a real big opportunity to greatly improve the district's fields that have been a sore eye for many, many
Are you
years.
serious?
And it's because we won't have kids out on those fields.
Yeah.
So usually they're taking a pounding, but we're gonna have to limit access to them, so why not, again, turn this whole negative situation into something positive that we can do.
What about
To
keeping,
rehab.
what about city rec using the fields? They're the ones that
There's
really tear
no
it up.
sports?
Well, we can't have social distancing with sports,
Gotcha, okay.
so we'll need to discuss that with civic permit process with the city, because we can't, so if we allow the use of our facilities, then we have to go and sanitize again. So when we have people use
We don't
our
wanna do
facilities
that.
on Saturday, and they go, we open bathrooms.
Yeah.
And now we would have to bring somebody in to go in and sanitize the whole area.
Everything.
That's a huge cost for us, that's different. Usually, we would just say, the custodian will come in Monday morning, go in and check on it, make sure it's good.
Well, there is a custodian that is on staff. And so if
On
the city
Saturday?
comes on Saturday, they have to open the gym.
Yep.
And they have to basically monitor and stay there just to make sure, because we were having a lot of damage.
Oh, gosh.
We were having a lot of just, cause unless you're doing a checkoff list, you know, with whoever comes in as your vendor, you know, to do whatever they're gonna do. But it's time consuming and many times it's easier to have our custodian there. And if there's a spill, there's a mess, there's something that happens, he's right away,
But they
okay.
were using it on Saturday or mostly in the evenings, right?
The difference is, I mean, some schools it's like it never closes. We have Rancho San Luis those in use
Oh, you're right.
All year
You're
long.
right.
all
That's right.
every day of the week, but what's different now is that person won't be able to do that and also make sure that everyone's adhering to social distancing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we have facilities on campus that they're great because people can go in and use them, but now we don't want them to ignore the social distancing requirements and have people there. Plus, our
People
own
won't take their
employees-
dogs on there?
our own employees, you know, I hope not, but I mean,
Yeah.
our own employees, you know, they also need days off. They
Yeah,
also
they do.
need time
Yeah,
and
They
it's,
do.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
so we
just a
would need
matter
to
of,
negotiate
you know,
that.
yeah, we do, and at the end of the day, there are facilities. And we need to manage control of them and do what's best for our district and our students, because those things are there first and foremost
them.
to provide for our students and provide for their education and learning in whatever
Exactly right.
capacity that may look like.
totally agree. And my recommendation to the board on next steps is that we hold a workshop, because what I've sketched out for you are what I believe to be the needs, what I believe to be the priority goals, and what I believe to be the recommended actions to achieve those goals. But I wanna put it into an actual plan, and I would like your involvement and your guidance and engagement in the process, so that we make sure we hit all of the most important things. Now, 3 months ago, I had a completely different focus. So you need to know, my focus has changed because the whole context has changed. And it's okay, because I still believe the things that are worse off because of coronavirus are offset by the things that are better. The things that we can innovate on, and the things that we can, well, we'll never lose in education, we'll never lose our ability to inspire kids. We'll never lose our ability to motivate kids. We'll you know, Mrs. Johnson showed us, okay, I can still perform for my kids. I can still make learning feel like
They're
the
there.
best thing in my day is my learning. So we know that this is going to come to an end, and when that day arrives, we'll cheer and we'll all give each other a hug if we can. But from now until then, we'll be prepared to have a dramatically better educational product for the kids next year.
Well, the only thing that I see here that, it's listed, but, it's something that we were really trying to push, and that's, to get more feedback from our parents. You know, I want them involved, but I also wanna hear, I want them to tell us what they want, and has been something that's always been lacking in our district, and with this whole thing, I don't know how we would do it, but
Right, cause our workshops were scheduled.
right, and
They
see,
got
And
canceled.
then blah.
I know, and I don't know how we get back to that.
Well, is there a way to
Webinar?
incorporate like
do.
a Zoom
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
public
You could.
hearing thing?
We have discussed it here, but I'll just reiterate, our special ed department continues to hold their online live meetings. They're calling them the special ed town halls.
Mhm.
We've put them on our district webpage, we've written articles in Benito Live,
Yeah.
San Benito Live about it. They did it again today, they had a Spanish one, they had 22 people on live line. Mr. Romero sat right there and spoke Spanish the whole time. Parents typed in their questions, he spit out answers for them.
Mhm.
I think we can do it, I just think
Yeah.
it's a matter
Well,
of,
then next school year we'll have to start.
we've got the schedule built, we can just
Yeah.
take it
Right,
from
right.
September on.
There you go.
We'll set it up in here, you'll see, it's actually a pretty awesome experience.
Can
I
we
think
see,
that's what we need
You
to
could.
can
do.
we see on that big screen, like everyone?
Yes.
Awesome.
whoever's on.
whoever's on. Sometimes it's too many parents, you don't wanna see 68 pictures.
No, it's
The
just
first thing,
whoever's talking, right,
Right.
their picture
They'll pop
pops up, yeah.
Yeah,
And we have a technology person with them to moderate, to make sure that the question, because some questions come in via chat, some questions come in via email, some questions come in via phone call.
Okay.
well, that's about the only thing that, I mean, I think you nailed this, I mean, you've got everything that we've talked about and everything that we have,
Cause the other thing, at the beginning of the school year, we have a back to school breakfast, at the end, so it's like, how do you, and thinking of how do you start the year on a positive note in your overall communication to everyone, do you live stream that?
Yeah.
Can,
That's exactly.
how do, so
That's
what
what we're
did
gonna
that
have
look
to do,
like,
yeah.
and
Don't have a choice.
keeping our staff at their sites and,
Stay at their sites.
providing,
He can do his thing from
and
here.
providing breakfast,
6
at
feet
the
apart.
sites,
Yeah.
for our staff,
The
but I mean,
donuts are in
it's,
your lounge, yeah.
Yeah.
all that stuff.
okay. So, I mean, just thinking about how that would look like, it's, but, and even the end of the year,
I was
what,
thinking the
what would that
same.
look like, closing out and thanking everyone, I think, we should all consider doing something like that for our staff at the end.
Totally agree. Thank you.
We done with that? Item 9A, we're actually discussion action item.
Before we get started on that, just real quick, I wanna thank you, Superintendent Ochoa. We have, really thought things out and, just, really taken the time and, I don't know how many people we have watching this, but, as one board member, I'm very, I really think that you have taken the time to try to pinpoint all the different ways that we're going, and I appreciate the work and effort that you put into this meeting today.
Proactive, not reactive,
Yeah.
Agree.
the key.
Can we second that one?
Yeah, cause I don't like to be reactive, I like to be proactive.
So this presentation is exciting. We started 3.5 weeks ago digging into the details about how to provide our students with mobile hotspots. And we basically searched into every single offer, every grant, every cost that was available to us. So we started off at the very high end, which was a program that would have cost $150 for each hotspot. And then each hotspot's agreement was based on data. So a 1 gig per month agreement was $25 a month. 3 gigs was $39 a month. 5 gigs was $50 a month. And when we did the math on how much that would cost the district, it was cost prohibitive. At the same time, we applied and submitted our interest into the California Teleconnect Fund application process for our district. And what that does is it basically makes us eligible for a 50% reduction in any money that we direct towards internet accessibility for needy families.
Oh, wow.
We're in the queue in that application process. And we started to call Verizon and Sprint, T-Mobile, and all the different companies, Spectrum, that provide access. And we whittled it down to what the board has in front of them tonight, which is a agreement for T-Mobile for education under a program they have called Empower Ed agreement. It's a 2-year term that gives us 1,500 Wi-Fi hotspot devices for free.
How many?
1,500.
Oh,
And it gives us unlimited data service to each one of those devices for $20 a month.
oh my God.
And when we apply our discounts, it brings the cost down even more, so much so that the fee with T-Mobile is for $22,755 a month. And we expect to receive that 50% discount from the CTF, the California Teleconnect Fund. That would bring the cost down under $12,000 a month, so that 1,500 families,
So
not even kids, families.
this is what catch my attention, so how many families of ours do not otherwise have Wi-Fi access? And then of those families, how many are duplicated, meaning there's two children and none that can run off of the device?
So remember, at the beginning of this, we did a big research, we called all the families. We weren't able to get answers from almost 25% of the families. In addition, 30% told us, I can't access the Wi-Fi at my home. So even just starting there, when we did the math, in order to address the needs of every single family who said, I don't have Wi-Fi, or my Wi-Fi is tied to a plan that's limited in terms of
The data.
or I just never responded to your calls, which as an educator, that's the biggest concern for me, because it means we're doing all the heavy lifting for that household. Then that's how we landed on 1,500, is by doing that calculus. All the people who told us they didn't have it, all the people who told us what they had was tied to data restriction that was, they can't decide to let their kid learn versus let their kid eat. And then the kids who we weren't able to reach their families. And so this program is going to allow us to have a true distance learning program actually for every child.
Is there a little buffer there? Like, do we have some excess? Because if unemployment continues to rise,
Well, that was my
No,
question.
more,
Are you saying every child or every child that needs it?
this would be families, right?
Mhm.
1,500
Right,
families.
It's one per household. It's one per
All
household.
of our,
It's not every, it's not
It's
every
ones that
household, because we have to be
so we're
responsible.
approximating, okay.
Yeah. My child goes to school in this district, I don't even.
Right.
And at each school, it's a different percentage. So you might have a school that has 85% of the families receive a hotspot.
Okay,
You might have another school that has 25%.
okay.
So we've done that calculus. But you have, as Rob pointed out, many households with more than one student.
Right.
And the hotspot will be able to handle the data demand of multiple devices. The other thing that's not included in this, but will be a part of our program, is we'll be ordering another 800 devices here very soon. Because we have to get devices in kids' hands. They have to have
The
the
Chromebook.
computer device, the Chromebook, and they have to have the Wi-Fi hotspot.
And what if you're not using all 1,500, is there it's just, this is
No,
what
that's
it
the way
is?
it is.
Okay.
That's what it is.
It's all part of the package, I would imagine.
It's all included in the package.
Could
The
I
nice
ask-
thing is, we own the hotspots. We don't give them back.
Could you
It's not
explain
ours.
what this device subsidy line is here? I don't know what that means. What's the subsidy? What are we doing on that?
Show me what page it is.
It's, one. It's the little chart there. It talks about the gigabytes.
We're on page
Features
77.
at the very end there, zeros and then $100. What is that? Is that something they're giving us back or?
Yeah, so what they're saying is, in a normal situation, they would charge much more for unlimited data. But because we're a government agency, we're getting a subsidy.
Gotcha.
What they're saying is, in effect, $200 per month.
Gotcha.
Well, thank you for doing this.
This is an incredible savings to the district. Major savings to the district.
And T-Mobile has a good service, around our county.
Well, we're gonna find out.
Yeah, we are.
I know like some people that have it, that have gone out to Villado,
And it
they won't
works?
get service.
Oh, okay.
They don't get service, so
It'll be
certain
interesting to see.
But
companies
within our
have better
school
service.
district,
Well, we'll find out, yeah.
I think it always gets more complicated when kids live further out.
Yeah.
So
right,
what this does is it establishes a baseline for us, and then we just take care of families. When we find out that the family legitimately doesn't have access, we pull
And
in,
even this won't help, and we gotta figure out
we
plan.
pull in a different
fees.
provider, we do it,
right,
we have hotspots that are AT&T hotspots that we use this year,
Mhm.
that we won't need to deploy next year in that way, so we could deploy those AT&T ones and, I have a Verizon phone, that's my personal phone.
Mhm.
I have an AT&T phone, that's the district's phone. The district's phone works about half the time, my Verizon phone works every time.
Yeah.
I live over by
It's a
Sunslope.
commercial.
Yeah. No, it's
Our
true though,
technology person,
unfortunately.
our tech person says the opposite.
Oh.
He says, my AT&T works beautifully and I live over by this school. That's what he said. He says, my AT&T.
See, and I've had Verizon for years, and I know people that had AT&T, and their lines were always getting dropped or something, and it's like, or can't, a lot of, but yeah, Verizon has always
But
been,
as you said, we'll find out.
But you know what, thank you for,
but
Well,
it's,
doing
this,
this.
yeah, this is huge.
This actually does bring equity
yeah, it
to the
does,
district.
yeah.
And, I it was on the TV, they were talking about the biggest problem Los Angeles has.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that they're not, they get like 45% participation, this is part of the problem.
Right,
The
A lot
kids
of big
don't have
cities,
that.
a lot of
Yeah.
big cities are
Yeah.
having this issue.
And they're having a real hard time with this, and it's great that we're able to solve it so
This is
cheaply.
big.
Yeah,
Dave, could you take us through the second page of the contract, page 78? So it's a continuation of section 4, and it talks about the total lines of service, so on and so forth, but in the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth column over, total customer commitment for service and device for the term of the agreement is 720,000.
Yeah.
How do we leap from 11,204 to that?
That's the price that it would be if there were no subsidy. That would be basically the agreement you would come to it. If you were trying to do this without the agreement, that's the amount you would pay. So we're absolutely not obligated to pay 720,000 and it won't cost us 720,000.
Wow.
Okay, so let's say that's true, which I know reason to believe it's not. Then you go to the column right, total amount to customer under the empowered program, 174,000.
And that's the substantial discount we're being provided through
No,
that
no,
program. But the other thing is, I wouldn't recommend this contract to the board unless we receive the California Teleconnect Fund monies as well. That's an essential component of it, so what this contract is saying, if you take a look at because I don't wanna confuse this aspect of it, so the cost of the program is $30,000 per month, but T-Mobile is discounting us $7,245 a month. It makes the actual cost to T-Mobile $22,755 a month. So you multiply that by 24 months, that's how much we're agreeing to pay. The difference is, we're applying for this grant, that's a 50% discount for that $22,000 a month. And that's how
where
we
you got your
that's how we get
11,000.
it down to 11,000.
So did we get that grant yet?
We're in the queue for it, and I won't proceed with this unless we get confirmation we're going to receive the grant.
Okay.
Even so, this cost, $22,700 for unlimited data for 1,500 devices and for hotspots is 200% less than any other offer we received. The other offers we received, as I mentioned, if you remember our 2 meetings ago at our special,
Yeah.
it was $750,000 a year
Yeah.
for only 1,000 devices, not
Yeah.
1,500 devices. And at that time, the board called out the fact that 1,000 devices wasn't gonna meet the need.
So, well, I as an individual member, I'm saying, I don't wanna approve something, he says, well, you're not gonna act on it until, unless you get the grant. Why don't we approve it after you get the grant?
Because you have to, it's predicated on having the agreement with the company, and since this is a special meeting, I could absolutely bring it back in 2 weeks and communicate that to, the CTF grant, through that grant process. But it's really it's your call as the board. You could ask me to bring this back in 2 weeks at our regular board meeting, and I present it to you with, hoping that CTF approves it, or you could approve it tonight with the understanding that I won't process it until the CTF approves it. So it's really, it's up to the board. My recommendation is that we take the offer that's out there, because the funds through the CTF process
Going quickly.
they're in a queue process. So if other districts go up ahead of us, then it's somewhat uncertain
That would
how.
drop us back.
But the thing is, we still need the service, so where
Right, I was
we,
gonna say that,
so at a
Right.
discounted price is
Exactly.
still much better
right,
than, you know, what we
What we've
were
talked
looking
about,
at
right.
before, what the cost would be to provide this to our students.
I'm with this.
And one of the things that the
Right,
board,
Ron? I mean,
Well,
if that's what we're taking into account, is making sure that our kids have equity and have the tools necessary
so this is accepting.
for next year.
Yeah, so, you want me to accept your premise that we have 1,500 families right now that have no access whatsoever?
Yes,
And so those kids are just flying out there, is that correct, Diego? You've not made contact with them, they're not participating at all?
no,
Or
they're-
except for the
it's
learning?
it's limited. So they're on some of our meetings, they use the program for this many minutes, but once they've reached their
Maxed out their-
capacity,
They have to
it drops
stop.
out.
Yeah,
It
especially with the Zoom meetings, take up so much
Yeah,
data.
Yes, they take up a lot.
Cause when I do the 24 months times the 22,755,
Mhm.
I get $546,120. So, and I'm going, would that change my mind on
Is that
this?
for
I
2
don't
years?
know, because again, I haven't seen any in-depth analysis for it. I mean, I wanna agree with this, but then even when I take that and I'm looking at the numbers here, 720,000 and then 174, it's not computing to me. That's what, I mean, Liz, you know this about me.
Yeah, no, I
You know,
know.
when I get to the contract,
And
I'm
it's for
saying,
2
I
years.
don't understand it.
Right,
On
he's,
its
the
face.
figure has to make sense to him.
It's for
The
2
breakdown.
years,
Mm-hmm.
2-year contract, so it's at a really still big discount.
Well, the 11,400 is 136,000, something like that.
Mhm.
I did the math. I'd like to make a motion that we, accept, this proposal and allow Diego to make a judgment call. And if he feels that we're going the wrong way, he will back out. But I think that, we have trust in his, faith and judgment that he will do the right thing. So I would like to make a proposal that we accept, approval of the contract between HSD and T-Mobile USA, Incorporated.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
So you had told us, just to go back and reference our last meeting, you said that to provide this to 1,000 students without this package or this deal presented before us tonight was gonna cost over $750,000
For 1 year.
for 1 year. We're talking at the 22,555 for 24 months, 546,120 is what the cost would be if we do not get the CTF program
That's right.
For 2 years.
for the 2 years. Cause if we do get that program, the cost goes down to 273,600. So even for me, a 2-year plan at 46,000 is substantially less, and we know,
Right.
I know personally, we have more, we're gonna need probably even more than 1,500.
Right. So it's 200 and something per year.
You know, of those little, things for families.
I'd also have, oh, go ahead, please. I'd also have to say that, okay, let's say that we put this offer, but we have to do
We
something.
have to do something.
We have to do something, we can't allow this many kids not to have access, especially, we don't know what the future's gonna bring. We don't, it could be that they're gonna have to do this all at home, we don't know that. And if we could get this kind of discount this quickly, even if we don't get the other, it's only fair to those kids. they can't be left out.
That's right.
And how are we gonna get anything that's cheaper?
That's right.
I'm sure you've done the research on this, I mean, he has, he showed us the last one.
Yeah.
So, that's why I say we cannot not do this.
That's right.
And then are we able to ask them, in the event that we have more kids than we anticipated, what could they do for us?
We're somewhat fortunate in that if we move down this path, we get these devices in, because there are thousands of districts throughout the country that are thinking about doing this.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
these things get shipped in batches to different location centers, so, this region has a certain number that they're gonna have for the next couple of
Yeah.
months, and then it's gonna, they're gonna say, well, we're waiting on distribution to get it here, and
This stuff could only cost more in the future.
That's right.
It only costs more.
We gotta jump.
It's the way business is.
So, I'm gonna be voting against this only because I don't understand the contract and the numbers that are presented, they do. And I look at that as a core role of the board is, look, Diego is supposed to bring us things like this, or any superintendent is, and our job is to validate what we're binding the school district to, and if I can't understand it, and I can't even on my here, how we get between what he's saying, what's in the contract, it's really not what he's saying, it's really what's in the contract, and then just going, well, especially due to the economic uncertainty, but I would say this anyway, if I can't look at the numbers and say what is on the faceplate of this thing and then go to here, I just don't think we should approve it, and, well, that's it, this is, to me, either a $174,000 contract, a $720,000 contract, a $30,000 contract, or something, but if I don't understand it, I can't approve it. So,
Where do you call for the vote then? Anybody else?
thank you, Steve, I'll run the
I'm
meeting
sorry.
with that. There being no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Nay. Motion carries 4-1. So, this thing we have here is request for future agenda items.
Anybody else?
Well, I like to go in order. Nothing from Carla? Nothing from Liz? Steve?
I would like, since I've been to the last 3 meetings here, I would like some way to present what we've had about the multi-purpose rooms, a lot of the information,
That'd be great.
the playground, resurfacing, things like that. I've been very impressed with the people we've talked to, and I would like to discuss it with the board.
So is this the facilities, spending plan, what?
Yeah, it would
Do
be
you know
like,
what
it
you're
would be
talking
part of that. It deals with the multi-purpose rooms at Sarah Vista, in Calaveras, perhaps.
That's because of the trip you went on and you
Yeah,
guys are following
yeah.
up, right? You talked about
All
this.
these contractors, we've been, I would like to discuss the financial end of it and the savings, the unbelievable savings that we can have and the things that we can do. Just with the $9 million estimate that they have for the gym at Rancho Santana, we can do a lot more. A lot of the things that are on that list. I'm not saying overnight, but it's definitely something we need to look into. Definitely we need to look into.
So this is like the 4th time we've asked for a facilities, spending plan,
No,
right?
well, in a way, I don't know that it's a spending plan. I would like to be able to show the board what we have come up with these contractors.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, and I think we've all talked about it before, is we know we're collecting all these development fees, those development fees are for facilities,
Right.
more or less, so, to me, I'd like to spend some of that money.
Yeah, well, to me, this is a much more expeditious and reasonable way to spend that money.
Yeah, so when would we be able to do that, or?
I mean, 2 weeks from now is not enough time, but June.
The June board meeting.
Okay.
I was wondering, if there is a way, that, parents who would like to buy Chromebooks, could, tag on to the district purchase to get a discount, an educational discount. I don't know if it's legal or not.
I can ask. I'll
That's
talk to our.
Great idea.
Yeah, I was just wondering
If
if there was a way that parents who would like to buy their own Chromebooks
Yes.
for their kids and have financial means to do so,
Yes,
if they could jump on an educational discount. And
thank
I-
you, that's a great idea, I
Well,
didn't even think
yeah.
of that at
I'll
all,
look into it.
Okay,
if possible.
if possible, yeah.
Anything else?
No,
Okay, I have, I've stated them in other places of the meeting, the reserves analysis and the cash analysis. Back down to Carl for announcements, but I'll read the next one, though, the next meeting of the Board of Trustees is May 26th. Is that the Tuesday after Memorial Day?
Yes.
Okay. So Carla, no announcement? Liz, no announcements? Steve, no announcements?
No,
Yeah.
just waiting, baby number 2 to come.
That must be
another
exciting.
baby?
I
I'll
have another
just tell you-
granddaughter, yes,
Oh my
any day now.
goodness.
I'll just tell you, I got to
Yeah.
serendipitously participate in, and I don't know why, but, a tag along with about 15 educators from San Bernardino County, from the San Bernardino County Office of Education, from the high school. Elizabeth is the principal of San Juan Ramos Elementary. And some people from there, to give an award to a student at the high school. She lived in our
The young
neighborhood,
lady,
and we all went over there, they asked me to take pictures, that's why. A kid that I had not remembered since years ago, when people were visiting her in the hospital, because something had happened to her. And she's one of your students, had overcome, I don't know, but she goes to high school, sophomore, had overcome all these hurdles, and now she's like a straight A student. So, anyway, I think you'll see that in video.
Every student succeeds, as they call it.
What's that?
It's the every student succeeds.
Yes,
recognition.
yeah, so, anyway, I thought, I don't know if we do that or not, but,
It's an AXA award, so indirectly, we're involved in that.
gotcha,
Is
okay.
it, did you say it's an AXA award?
AXA, the Association
yeah, I
of
know.
California School Administrators. Where they find a child that's overcome a lot of obstacles to achieve success.
Yeah, so, they did, some relatives came by in their cars and stuff, so it was sort of fun. So that said, if there's no other business to conduct, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:43 PM.
So moved.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Can we do the binders?
Leave them.
I'm taking one.
Whoever wants.
I have enough collections.
I know.
Thank you for being here, you guys. Thank you so
Lot.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bernowski.
Thank you.
Turn off my live feed. Take it down. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.